Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to Movies with Love. This actually surprises me because I was not originally going to do Dexter New Blood. Um, I just did my reviews for the first series, the first 8 seasons, and I wasn't going to do New Blood, but I did individual reviews a couple years ago for the first few episodes, the first I think 5 episodes, and then after that I didn't continue. So a couple years went by, and I'm like, should I just review the second half of each episode? So I did, but when I reviewed the second half of the show, I wrote notes down this time. And so when I did the second half of the series and I did the individual episodes, I had a lot to say for the most part. And so I just thought, well, heck, the first half of the season, I didn't write any notes for. So what if I actually wrote notes down for the first half? I reviewed the episodes but never wrote anything down. So what if I re-reviewed, but this time like wrote notes down? So I wrote the notes down, and before I knew it, I had notes for the entire season. So I'm like, well, heck, why don't I just do a whole season then for New Blood? So now we're here. Um, yeah, so this one, like I said, this one was not something I had planned. It just kind of fell into place. So I figured maybe it could help someone. I'm gonna try to get through this list pretty quick, simply because of how much I put into the individual episode reviews. So I'm going to kind of get through this kind of quickly. Plus, I'm on a time limit again. I'm pressed for time lately. Dexter New Blood is um about so for the first episode, I'm gonna talk about the first episode called Cold Snap. Now there's a lot going on in this one episode. Now this show, this season of Dexter is about parenting, but for right now I'm going to talk more about the mythology for a little bit before I get into the main theme. So where we're at in the show right now, Dexter has lost his human side. He's lost touch with humanity, and the fact that he's lost touch with humanity because it died within him is shown in the finale of season 8. So now, the only connection that Dexter has with his human side is actually his internalized guilt. That internalized guilt is manifested as Ghost Deborah. I guess you can call her that. So now, instead of seeing Harry, Dexter now sees Deborah's ghost, and she represents his guilt. She also represents his doubt. So whenever Dexter has some sort of doubt within himself or doubt in a situation, or if he should or shouldn't do something, then Deborah's ghost usually pops up in his head. Psychologically, that's basically where we're at. Um, there are parallel characters. Angela, Dexter's new girlfriend, love interest, is a parallel to Deb's character. You can see Teddy as a parallel to Quinn, I believe. Molly Park is a parallel to Masuka, but whatever. Masuka's parallel could also, yes, that's yes, and Camilla's counter is the lady who gossips a lot in Dexter New Blood. Even if I did give her name, people would probably be like, "Who?" The lady who's always, I think she's always sitting down and gossiping over the phone to people. Yeah, you said she was parallel to Camilla, and Logan, the black cop, parallel to Dokes in a sense. So in a sense, the main characters in New Blood are psychological representations of Dexter's head. What's going on in Dexter's head. Um, I can't remember Angela's daughter's name. For some reason, I can never remember her name, but um, Angela's daughter and Harrison are parallels of Cody and Astor. And you'll actually find something very interesting that the two of them, the way that they talk, their dialogue is actually very similar, as well as their body language and just the sense of tone of how they talk. Harrison and Angela's daughter. But a lot of these characters are parallels. As for Kurt, Kurt is the side of Dexter that is like if Dexter was like the perfect camouflage type person in a sense, like, you know what I mean? Kurt is kind of like the embodiment of that in a sense that, oh, this guy's a hero, he's a nice cool guy and blah blah blah. Basically, if Dexter's disguise, his mask, his fake persona basically is kind of what Kurt is, but you know, there's a lot of complexities there. It's basically just like his mask or whatever. Um, so psychologically, that's where we're at. And also mythologically, the snow area. So this actually kind of also goes inside of Dexter's mind. He is stuck, and being stuck mentally, he's in a stagnant place, and that's shown in the snow. So the snowy area of it really shows the cold, stagnant depths of where Dexter's emotions and mind are at. They're just frozen in time, basically. It just froze. But also, in New Blood, and also mythologically, every season of Dexter revolves around a circle of hell. And the ninth circle, which is season 9 of Dexter New Blood, the ninth circle is of treachery, and it is also the Ice Slayer. So yeah, mythologically, that's where we're at. Um, the show was not supposed to have an eighth season. Apparently, they were the writers, from what I heard, and some of the producers wanted to stop at season 7, but I believe it was the studio. I don't remember exactly who it was who wrote a season 8 renewal, but apparently the writers and some people didn't not want some of the crew members did not want to go past 7. It's actually, I think, a good thing that they had season 8 and got 8 out of the way, because now they can get to their ninth layer and be done with it. So now we don't have to worry about that. Now, with Dexter coming back, we have a fresh new blueprint for Resurrection. So I think that's all I can say mythologically. That's where we're at, Ninth Circle. The Ninth Circle is also a display of the top half of the devil. And that's how you kind of find the bodies in toward the end of the show, of this, yes, of the show. So anyway, also in episode 1, there's a lot of temptation going on when Dexter is running through the forest. He finds the deer. The deer is, I would say, in my head. Because I don't want to trip on my words and say the wrong thing. So I would have to be very careful about what I say here, because Dexter is a very, very mathematical, complex show. And if you say the wrong word, then it kind of throws everything off, because every character specifically means something, and it can slightly represent something else, but then a whole new character is representative of that slight tilt. So when you're talking about what character represents what psychologically for Dexter, you have to be very, very articulate about it. So Dexter's running through the snow and he sees the white deer. And of course, the deer represents innocence. And so you can see that the white of the deer is just a type of purity. And Dexter still has his purity like in his scope. He's still like looking at it. He's still running. He's still checking it out. It's still there. That purity is still there. It's like, okay, still there. Then he goes off and he comes back and he sees it and he aims at it. It's still there. He's like, awesome. Well, um, you start seeing how a lot of themes of addiction start to slip in through this episode. Now, this actually goes back to season two of Dexter because season two was about lust and addiction. But the idea to kill Lila off was not a part of the original story plan. Lila was actually supposed to disappear and keep living. And that actually psychologically represents for Dexter that that sense of addiction or emotional, chaos in a sense is still alive somewhere in him. He's just very unattached to it. And so it was, I believe, Michael C. Hall's idea to kill Lila because he felt like the audience would be cheated and it would cause some weird complications between the audience and, oh, he never got Lila and when is Lila coming back so he can kill her? And it just would be too distracting. So having Lila live was more of an artistic choice, whereas making her die was more of a fan service, I guess, in a sense of killing off Lila. But mythologically, Lila was not supposed to actually die in the show. So her actually living was supposed to be the first episode of Dexter New Blood. Like her presence or her essence still being alive in Dexter is basically what the first episode of Dexter New Blood is. And that is, slowly slipping back into, addictions and such like and such. But so that's when it gets kind of weird because it's not an artistic, it was more of a fan thing. And of course, a character being killed off in Dexter means that that what that character represented for Dexter is actually been being killed off in him, psychologically or emotionally. So, that's when they got kind of weird with this. So you do start seeing that there's a lot of temptation and things like that. But disappearing, changing your name, having a fresh new start where no one knows you, that really does highly correlate with Lila's character. And so Dexter kind of followed in Lila's footsteps in that way, energetically, mathematically, he kind of did. So now, by doing that, following in her footsteps, he ends up falling into the path of falling back into addiction and emotional instability and chaos. And you see that come in with Matt Caldwell's character. It would have been interesting if Lila never died and when Dexter disappeared, he would have actually been with. But anyway, uh, stay on subject. So yeah, you see that in Matt Caldwell's character. Matt Caldwell really representing addiction and chaos and temptation and things like that. Dexter's really trying hard to keep his persona, keep himself calm, keep himself together. And Matt Caldwell's presence comes in. And why is Dexter having such a hard time? So this really kind of goes back into a Dexter original sin, where the idea is doing what he does wasn't so much of his darkness, but it was more of a yin release. If anyone knows about yin and yang, um, it's a circle, and then one half is light and has a black circle in the middle of it, and the other half is all dark and it has a white circle in the middle. And so Yang is the white that has the dark circle in the middle, and Yin is the black that has the white circle in the middle of that symbol. So the show really goes into Dexter's yin side, which is Dexter is expressing, it has this huge sense of darkness that it's just a huge blinding darkness, which is black. But the source of that darkness being created actually comes from a dimmed light, which was a sense of innocence or purity or just light. And so whenever you look at the yin symbol, that's why yin has a tiny white dot, and then it's encased by darkness because that shows that darkness is birthed from light, and on vice versa, light is birthed from darkness. So when Matt Caldwell shows up, you Dexter's internalized light, or his destiny, whatever you want to call it, is saying, "Hey, you were put on this earth to do this thing. This is basically what you're here for. This is your destiny. This is like your purpose. This is why. This is what you do." And when Matt Caldwell shows up, then now there's a temptation for Dexter to basically reclaim his destiny or go, or follow his light, things like that. So now it's the light inside of Dexter that is actually being triggered through Matt Caldwell's darkness. So as Matt Caldwell is doing all of this sinful activity, it's actually triggering the internalized angel inside of Dexter versus Matt Caldwell's demons. That gets into a very deep angelic, it goes into a deep spiritual type demonology type thing, which I can't really explain right now or go into. So I know it may seem like, oh, what, that sounds weird. It's like there's a whole nother world to explain that, and I don't have time to explain an entire you know angelic demonology and how it correlates with the mythology of Dexter. I don't have time, but that is. um so toward the end, you see Dexter aiming his rifle at the deer, and then he puts it down and he puts it on the back, and then he reaches his hand out and he's like, "Oh, please." There's this beautiful moment when he's trying to fully embrace his purity. He's trying to fully embrace that path and say, "I want this path of life." As he does that, the deer gets shot. Now, the fact that Matt Caldwell shot that deer is symbolic because that represents Dexter's internalized purity has been killed by this demonic temptation represented by Matt Caldwell's character. So by Matt Caldwell actually killing the deer, Matt Caldwell actually, in a sense, killed that sense of purity that was like kind of keeping Jim Lindsay away from Dexter Morgan. So once that deer or that sense of purity or that obstacle was killed off by Matt, the two were able to reconnect. And everything that happens internally inside of Dexter, we visually see it throughout the show. That's so now, right when that happens, that's when Dexter flips out and he relapses, goes after Matt Caldwell. And that's when he says, "Okay, if I'm gonna do this, then I have to do it right." And he relapses. That's the first time we hear his internal dialogue come back. Now, when Dexter and Matt talk, you know what? I think that's about all I can say about that. So now, actually getting into my notes because yeah, I'm just starting my notes. 20 minutes in. Huh? So for episode 1, Cold Snap. You see this scene where early on in the episode, Dexter's talking with Deb. As Dexter is talking with Deborah, she's there, she's standing there. She's like, "Oh, you ready?" And he kind of dances a little bit. She sits there with him at the table, and then she disappears. Right when she disappears, you hear this weird, like scratchy, demonic noise of Dexter sharpening his blade. I believe it was his meat cleaver that he was giving to the butcher. But in that scene, when you see Dexter doing that and you hear that noise, that shows visually and to our senses that this sense of guilt that Dexter has, and the ghost of Deborah is actually the wedge that's kind of keeping Dexter grounded. And once you start seeing Deborah's ghost disappear, then that darkness tries to get to him, and you start really seeing how scary and dark that feeling is, because once Deborah's there, they're bonding in silence, and then once the silence is gone, it's just a lot of loud noise of like a demon, trying to, or like a demonic force, or dark force trying to call out for Dexter as he's sharpening the blade, talking to him with every sharpening. So it really does give you an like a sense of what Dexter's going through in his head as he's trying to resist this temptation or this darkness. As Dexter is going to his job, Fred's, um, he sees three children walking his way, high schoolers, I believe. And they say, "Oh, hey, hello, Mr. Lindsay." And Dexter says, "Hey." He actually calls each of the three students by name: Zach, Becca, and Scott. And then I believe they say, "Hey, are you going to the game?" And Dexter says, "Go Hawks." So I can't speak about the Hawks, but what I can speak about are the three characters, three teenagers: Zach, Becca, and Scott. Scott was the name of the kid that Dexter saved in season 4 of Dexter, who was in the cement bag, who Trinity was going after. And then Dexter was able to save the kid and bring him back to his parents. Becca was the name of Trinity's daughter, yeah, in season 4, that was his daughter. And Zach was the name of the kid that Dexter tried to save in season 8, who he was trying to teach the code to, but then the brain surgeon ended up getting to him. So yeah, those three characters, Zach, Becca, and Scott, are all kids that had some correlation to Dexter in the past, further kind of showing where his mind is psychologically, and seeing how he really created this world in his head, and such a sense. But at some point in this episode, Dexter is talking to Deb, and he says, "I feel like I'm being watched." And Deborah responds to, "I think you're letting this Matt guy get to you." In this scene, Dexter saying, "I feel like being watched," is his internal light trying to reach back out to him, and it's his light that's watching him. And when Deborah says, "I think it's this Matt guy getting to you," that goes more back into the demonology, where it was Dexter's light is trying to seek him out now to fight off this darkness that's in Matt Caldwell. So it's actually Dexter's light that's watching him. In this scene, you also see Dexter's talking to Deb, and she's next to him, but she's blurry. And as she's talking to him, she can't really see her. But then he puts the the sauce on his ham, and then she disappears for a second. And then when she disappears, it looks like Dexter's like putting blood on his hand. and then ends up coming back. But that really shows how far apart Dexter's mind is between that those dark thoughts and feelings versus the loud dark noise versus the silence that Deb brings to him. That's more of a director, a little director thing. Next, then okay, the last note that I have for episode 1: when Harrison shows up at Dexter's doorstep and he says, "Hey, are you Dexter Morgan? It's me, Harrison." And Dexter's like, "Harrison," and he wants to go to Harrison so bad, but then Deborah says, "Wait a minute, no, everyone that gets close to you, they get hurt, they die." And then his internalized guilt pops up, which is represented in Deb. And then so Dexter's like, "Oh, no, no, that's not me. Sorry, get out of here." That's actually Dexter rejecting his light. So now that's Dexter really saying, do I really want to stay, in this life, and I love this life. This is what I want for myself. Dexter's light is represented in Harrison's character, and you see that in season 6 when brother Sam tells Dexter that Harrison is his light. But so Harrison is Dexter's internalized light trying to find him again, saying, "Hey, you have a destiny, and I'm calling you to your destiny right now." So Dexter rejects it. Now, toward the end of the episode, the deer gets shot, and then Dexter ends up relapsing. Right after Dexter does what he does, Dexter ends up allowing his light to come back in. But the thing about allowing Dexter's light back into his life is that it also lets back the darkness that comes from that light. So now he ends up, embodying the darkness that comes with the meaning of his light. That goes into another philosophy called cause and effect, which is the effect of how things are expressed are contradicted by the cause in which it is created from. Moving on from that, so as Dexter does embrace his light and says, "Okay, I'm going to go back and accept my light," then he goes to Harrison and tells Harrison, "Hey, I am your father, and I am Dexter Morgan. You were right." So that was Dexter accepting himself, accepting, his legacy and his light back into his life. But now he's just accepted the dark that comes with that light. So I haven't even gotten started on the main theme of this season. It's okay. I'll get through this quick. Episode 2. So this episode starts off. Harrison and Dexter are in the room, in the living room of the cabin, and they're quiet. Harrison is just sitting there, not saying anything. Harrison is in a situation where he sought out the truth. He sought out why do I feel this way? Why am I going through these things? And he seeks out his parent. Now, as he seeks out his parent, Dexter, now he just wants answers. But at this point, how do you ask energetically? How do you ask? Because by being there in this moment, Harrison offers an energy that needs some correction. And Dexter, being the parent, is expected to fix all the energy. But if it is visually or verbally expressed by Harrison, if Harrison verbally expresses what's going to be focused on isn't the energy that's coming out, it's the words that are coming out. And that creates a filter that stops the rawness of the feelings from coming out. So when you have something so fragile like this, like a person's soul reaching out for healing in such a way, your Harrison's going to be quiet and he's not going to know what to say. And as a parent, you're expected, hey, fix me right now, fix everything, figure it out. Dexter didn't know what to say, but yeah, most of the time we don't. But when you're open and you're honest with your kids, when they're here and there's an elephant in the room, you have to make sure to address it. You know why they're there, you know what they're feeling, you know what you did. That's what needs to be focused on. Like, okay, let's get this out in the open. Let's talk about this. Let's be completely open and honest. I'll be open and honest with you, and I'll tell you the truth, and we'll go from there. You know, as a parent, that's what you got to do sometimes. Let's see. For the so yeah, as long as you open up to them, then they will open up to you about their pain. But you have to be open. Have to be open to listen to their pain, to hear what they have to say about it. Also in this scene, Dexter. This is goes into the mythology part, but in this scene, Dexter asks, "Hey, what happened to Hannah?" And Harrison says that Hannah died. And Dexter said, "What? She died? How?" And Harrison tells her. During that whole scene, Harrison's face is not seen. They don't show Harrison's face, so there's still a possibility that Harrison could have killed Hannah. But the fact that they did not show Harrison's face is actually strategic in so many different ways. Um, Dexter asks Harrison, how did he find him? And Harrison explains. But what he says is that Dexter was a part of a bowling team and that he saw pictures of the bowling and then he was able to connect together Jim and Dexter, and that's how he found him. The legacy of bowling is actually what connected Dexter with his father who abandoned him. So the fact that the idea or the concept of bowling connected Harrison with the abandonment of Dexter is really a poetic thing. It really shows that there are forces, there are hobbies, there are talents, there are concepts that will link together the father to the son, no matter how much they've talked, even if they've never met each other. A father could be a musician and have a child and not know about that child, and the child will have the ability and the passion to play music, and it's just something that's just an invisible force that just connects generations together. So in this case it was bowling, but sometimes you may have a great grandfather who had a writing skill, and then the father may have a writing skill, but they're a poet or something, and then the grandchild comes out and they become a rapper. It's just some kind of invisible force that links together father and son, and it doesn't even have to be a skill. It can be a situation altogether. A lot of people will go through these situations where they'll say, people in certain neighborhoods, that I've talked to, they've been like, "Oh, I never want to be like my father or whatever. I don't never knew my father, but whatever." And this person who never knew their father may end up being rude or mean or even abusive toward women. And then one day their mom tells them, like, "You were just like your father. Everything that the way that you're treating women is just how your father treated me." And the son was like, "What?" It's because he ends up following the footsteps of his father and not even realizing it. It's just something invisible, something in the spiritually, something in the DNA that yeah. So I'm gonna further elaborate more into that on a later note. Also, if you try to do kind gestures for your kid, hey, I can do this for you, I can do that for you, they're not gonna accept it. They're not going to accept a kind gesture from you if they feel like they can't trust you first. And I've been through that too, where I needed help financially with something, but there have been problems with my parent and I've been like, oh, I really need help, and they're like, oh, let me help you out real quick, and I'm just like, nah, because as a parent, when you do something or say something and trust is kind of broken, that's not something I want to go back into. You know what I mean? So, no matter how much you love your children, if you try to do something nice for them, even if they do need it, they're not going to accept it, especially if they can't trust you. So you have to keep that in mind. Don't call them stupid or say, "Oh, you're this or you're that," and I'm trying to help you. Just know that if they can't trust you, then they're not going to make themselves vulnerable to you. Also, in this episode, your children may not always follow in your footsteps when it comes to how you dealt with problems or how you deal with problems or even solutions. Dexter, he grew up, you know, kids making fun of him and all this stuff. And Harrison grew up and, or Harrison was in school and, everyone liked him. And Dexter had social issues, whereas Harrison was like, oh, no, I'm cool. I'm fine. I like these people. A lot of times we'll compare our pain and what we've gone through, and we will channel that into our children and how we raised our children. Can't always do that because we end up preparing our children for our past instead of their future. So it's important to realize that just because you've been through something, just because you've been through life and it's been hard, doesn't mean it's going to be hard for your child. A lot of the things that you have overcome, your children are going to be born with that energy of overcoming these issues. You know what I mean? So when they're born, they may not have to deal with it because you've cleared out most of that karma, that karma or whatever yourself. You've already cleared it out. So if you've been in an abusive relationship and you've learned how to get out of it, and then you have a child, your child may not fall into abuse and you may just think, oh, they're going to be abusive, so I'm just going to nail it in their head, how to protect themselves, how to do this and how to do that. And it's different from just protecting your child versus, I've been through this harsh thing, so I'm going to tell my child to how to prepare for all of this. And it's like, they may never in their life be put in a position where they have to deal with the same problems that you had to deal with. But because you hammered it in their head, then it's something that they may expect. So then when it doesn't happen, or when it might potentially happen, they invest into that potential and then they recreate the scenario. And it's like, this probably would have never been a part of, you know what I mean? So like, there's a difference between preparation, but also, you know, channeling what you think life is like into your child and into your children's life. I've been through that many times. My mom's had a rough life and tried to give me a better life and say, hey, I want to give you everything that I've never had. Well, by doing that, she never grew up having what she gave me, so therefore didn't know how to maintain it, and therefore ended up re-sabotaging it. So it was like, okay, so you wanted me to have a good life, so I wouldn't go through all these bad things. But once I had these healthy boundaries, you did not know what that looked like in a person. And when you saw how happy and confident I was, it was a threat to you. And you didn't understand why I was that way when life is so cruel and cold and messed up to people that were, you know, my age, that, were that way to her when she was my age. So now that she doesn't know how to handle it, she's like, okay, I don't know, you're too confident, you're too this, you're too that. So I'm gonna have to like do something about that. So she would end up sabotaging what she tried to preserve in me. And whenever I did try to protect myself. It never ended well. It never ended up well. So, just to give an example of myself, of my mom, she taught me how to not love, how to, put my middle finger up to the world, to everybody. Don't trust this person, don't trust that people. No one cares about you. No one loves you. You're not you're not capable of love. You can't do this, you can't, do that. Life is terrible. People are terrible. No one's ever going to help you. Don't ever trust your family. Don't ever do, and I'm not trying to sabotage my mom's legacy, but what I'm saying is she's told me a lot of cruel and messed up and cold things, whether they are true or not. Everything in the world potentially can be true, but it doesn't mean that everyone in the world is going to experience everything that everyone else in the world is going to experience. We're not all going to experience all of each other's problems. Even if we do, we're not going to react to those problems the same way. It's not a whole this is guaranteed going to happen. So I've been raised to be very cold, to be very detached, to be very unloving, to be very untrusting, to always being on my guard, to really not liking the world, to always relying on myself, not letting anyone come into my life, never be a partner to anybody. I have a role, and that is what my role is. And I will be worth nothing if I don't follow that role, if I don't look a certain way, if I don't act a certain way, if I am not a certain way. I will never receive love. I will never. I will never be looked at in such a good way, and that is how I was raised. Now, whether or not that was my mother's intention, that is what has happened. We've talked about it. Nothing got resolved. It was all put on me, and she never wanted to take responsibility. So, um, trying to get back to the so yeah, but all of this was stuff that she went through, issues that she went through, people who did bad things to her, and she took all of that and tried to instill it inside of me, which I am the exact opposite of all of that. I grew up not dealing with people like that. But because I didn't, she was the source of all of that pain. And she was the one who injected all of that into me, not the world. And whenever people did do something bad to me, I was like, I have the choice how I'm going to handle this. And I chose to handle it the way I wanted to, in a positive way, in a good way, in an understanding way. To say, okay, this person's going through something, and I can't just invest in that pain and make it worse. I can't invest in that pain and start a fight just because maybe I'm upset or something, and like I can't do that. I'm in control, and this was like the only sense of control that I had, was keeping my heart pure in its own way, and unfortunately I had to reject my mother a lot, and growing up it just became a natural instinct to reject her now. And I'm saying all that not to trauma vomit, but what I'm saying is when it comes to a parent and a child, that is a serious relationship. So, don't get pissed off or mad and say, oh, this guy's just talking about his problems. I've been through this. And because I've been the child of going through this, I can see why a parent would have intentions to do something, but they don't actually know what they're doing to their child. So I'm trying to give some insight of how your child may be feeling when you don't have the ability to see it yourself. You know what I mean? So what I've gone through hopefully can help someone in some way. So no, I'm not trauma dumping. I'm just, you know, or maybe I am. Maybe I am, but it still goes in with the theme. So, um, let's see for my next. Um, so for my next note, so the note I just said is, yeah, your children may not take after your footsteps, or they may not handle problems the way you had to handle them. So yeah. So after that note, okay. So this is when Dexter and Angela were sitting on the couch in this scene, and Angela was saying, "I had so many concerns about my parenting and this and that. And I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to connect with. But now that I know you have a son, I can open up and I can express these concerns with you." And so she opens up and says, "Now that I'm opening up to you, you open up to me." And that's how it works. So Dexter says, "Okay." And then Dexter becomes vulnerable and realizes, this is a situation where he can't really fully control it. And he feels safe enough with Angela to open up to her about his concerns for Harrison. Now we get to a scene later, and I don't remember which episode, when Logan is talking with Dexter after the whole, drug situation. And Dexter says, "You don't know anything about being a parent, so don't try to talk to me about parenting, when you don't know anything." And Logan's like, "Okay." And he walks off. Um, Now, this is more of a relationship thing. Now, if you have a partner, if you have a partner, a co-parent, something along the line, co-parent or whatever, it is very important that the two of you, it's very important that someone initiates a safe space to say, "Hey, here's a safe space to open up and allow this issue to be discussed in a good, positive way that can help benefit, as much as it can for." And when that happens, when someone says, "I'm open to talk about this," the other person has to say, "Okay, let's both open up about our concerns." And when you both open up about your concerns, you focus on the solution and what the solution needs to be. Because if someone opens up and it's just about, "This is how I feel and I want to express this," and the other person says, "This is how I feel, I want to express this," it just becomes opinions. And when you start getting into the realm of opinions, you hit these intersections where the roads don't always go straight with each other. And that is when you start hitting these terrible roadblocks with each other. And roadblocks, internalized roadblocks, just lead to arguments. That's all that is. So if there's a miscommunication, if there's a "we can't connect," if it's "I don't understand this, I don't understand your point of view of this, I don't understand that," or "Oh, you felt left about this way, I felt right about this way," and all it does is create a conflict now. So it's like you guys have to allow the space of finding solutions. Now, sometimes it's like, "Well, here's a solution," and then you say, "Oh, but there's a problem with this solution," and that you just have to be very careful, because there are some times when people, when they do open up, they have a lot of just razor blades in their heart. So when they open up and they say, "Here's some space for a solution on how we raise our kid," or whatever, all they really want to do is to further dictate you, or further dictate the situation, or further say, "I could say that I was open up to the idea, but as soon as the idea of communicating happens, you end up attacking the other person and saying, 'I want to know all of your points of views.'" So when that person tells you all of their points of views, psychologically, you're just like creating vaccinations in your head, psychological vaccinations, reminding yourself or telling yourself in your head, "Okay, they have this point, they have this point, they have this point. I disagree with all those points. So psychologically, I feel like none of them are important. So therefore, I have more and more reasons to enforce the reason. I have more and more reasons to enforce why I am right, why I am correct, why I want to do things a certain way, and why I want it done my way." So you have some people who will purposefully do that, some people who purposefully want you to open up to them, just so that they have more of a sense of superiority. That there may be details or informations on a subject or a situation that they overlook or they do not see, and therefore they create cracks in their walls. And if someone gets into that crack, they can break down their entire psychological structure, and mentally that terrifies them. So it is very important that you know what kind of person you are dealing with, and you have to be very careful for those kinds of people. But when it comes to trying to be a parent and opening up, focus on the solution. Focus on the solutions, on what can be done, on how things can move forward. Sometimes even go come as you go. Just figure it out as you go. Sometimes positive reinforcement is all that's needed. Sometimes confidence is all that's needed. Sometimes just oh, don't be this, this just we all know what a healthy conversation is, especially when it comes to children. So keep that in mind. For my next note, um, this scene is when Audrey and Angela were talking. I believe this was the scene where Audrey was like, "Oh, she's only a dictator to me, a controlling dictator with me. Don't worry, guys." And it's when Angela was trying to, in her own way, discipline Audrey, her daughter Audrey, and everything. And Audrey is like, "I'm not Irish. Stop worrying about me." There is this thing where we will have one child, and this one child can do something bad or fall down a bad path. And when we have a second child, we sometimes will always remember our first child or our previous child and compare the situations of our previous child to our new child, to the next one in line. I know that I have a, we just have to be so we just as parents, that's just something that a lot of parents will do. Sometimes it's second nature to do that. Sometimes we'll have a kid and maybe we lost a kid or something like that, or even a best friend, whatever. And when we have someone else to take care of, we're like, oh, I had this other person to take care of, or I had this other child to take care of, and it just didn't go right. And I have my second child, and now I want to be more there for them, or I want to do this for them more that I couldn't give to the first child, and things like that. That's a really rough situation, and that's not really a situation that I can speak on. But the closest thing that I can say about that is I do have one dog. I have a dog. He's like my child. But I do know that if I got a second dog, it would be unfair to that second dog because what my first what he, what he offered, what he does for me, how he makes me feel, the memories that we have together. I i can't do it again. I can't. It's just too hard, and if I had a second dog, that it wouldn't be the same for that second dog. But I just know that we just have to be more mindful of when we took care of someone the first time. Just know that you did all that you could do. Just know that you were still new to the situation, that you were still trying to figure things out. Doesn't matter how much you know, it's about how much you understand. And you may know a lot, but you may not understand a lot. And while you're going through things, sometimes it doesn't work out and something bad will happen or something. And you can't blame yourself for that. Say, oh, I knew better. It's like, but did you understand better? Just because you know better, we all know how to do the right thing. We don't understand the meaning of doing the right thing. You know what I mean? So just know it wasn't your fault. Just know that you did the best you can. Just know that you loved as much as you can. Just know that that love can never be replaced. Love is infinite, and you know sometimes there may be something there, but just gotta, as a child, be patient with your parent, because if they had a first child and they're not there anymore, you're the second child, they're still gonna love you as much as they possibly can. There may be something there that hurts still, and they may not know how to deal with it. They may not know how or what to do. And every time they try, it's just ugly and dark and messed up. And even if they try to say, I want these feelings to go away, I want to explore, how to get rid of them, and they can't, like, you have to just have some patience and tell your parent, hey, I understand you had a first, and you had your experiences and your relationships with your first, with your previous person that you had to take care of. Maybe it was a best friend. Maybe it was, someone at a hospice or at a retirement home. Even, it doesn't have to be a child that they had to take care of. But just say, hey, I understand. But before you took care of me, you had to take care of these other people or this other person, and you guys had your own thing, your own relationship. And when they left and they passed, I understand that that may hurt in such a way, but just know that I don't want to blame you for this type of absence that you may have toward me. Just say that you understand that there's something there, and that you want them to feel safe about exploring those feelings in such a way with you, and that you're not going to blame them for having this coldness towards you, because they may not understand what they're feeling themselves. And just say, I understand that I was not there previously, and I'm taking on some dark, messed up, maybe even broken leftovers, emotional leftovers. But I'm here, and I love you, and I care about you, and I got you. We can work through this as best we can. So yeah, it's just do that as if you're a child going through that with your parent or something, or even if you're a parent and your child's taking care of you, and they took care of your spouse and the spouse died, and now they're taking care of you, and it's like, oh, you're the second parent and you're about to pass on. Your child may be cold towards you. Just try and have that understanding with each other. So for the next, um yeah, so yeah, just be careful about that. Be careful about being overprotective. Overprotective, protective and overprotective are two different things. Yes, it's a dangerous world and everything, and sometimes it is a dangerous world, and you may have concerns, relationship concerns, traditional concerns or worries for your child or whatever, but you can't always expect the same outcome to happen with your second or your third that may have happened with the previous, with the first or second or whatever. So just be careful about being too overprotective. And if you, what was the quote? It was the quote that she said when Angela went to the reservation. If you have a leash too tight, then you risk losing your child forever. So just be careful, give them a little bit of slack, let them do their thing. Sometimes let them explore life, and just be there for them more. Anyway, to move on to the next note, Dexter or Harrison confronts Dexter, says dark tendencies. What does that mean? Yeah, like I said, people, children, we all have symptoms of our parents, and your children may have symptoms of you, parts of yourself that you never addressed or struggled with. Um, Not so much as past experiences that you've been through, but things that you currently struggle with or struggled with throughout your life that are unresolved feelings or whatever. Um, Maybe certain habits or certain skills, whatever. Sometimes our children will have certain, I guess, tendencies to do something. It doesn't always have to be bad. It could be good, but I'm trying to, anyway, doesn't have to be bad. It could be good. Like one of the tendencies that I had is whenever I would eat a plate of food, I would eat my food in a certain order and then eat certain parts of the meal last. And that's something I've always done my entire life. Never knew why until I was maybe 30. I was decades later. I ended up talking with my dad, and my dad just happened to say in a conversation how he eats his food in a certain order, and how he explained it is the exact way that I do it. And I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, I never knew that, and I guess he never knew that either. That it was just natural for me to eat a certain way, not realizing that that's how my father would eat all of his meals. So, sometimes you may have symptoms or tendencies that are reflections of our parents and, what our parents have gone through and things like that. Just don't let your children have to deal with these alone. Just know that, they may have tendencies that you may have and just be like, oh man, I had an attitude and now I got to deal with a child that has my attitude too. Darn it. But anyway, just, yeah, dark tendencies. Just, try and handle it in a healthy way. I don't know. The next, um, The next note was I wrote was about running away because of the demons we have, and saying that our children would thrive if we weren't around. That actually goes into what I just said a couple notes ago, just now, which is we may abandon our children, we may leave our children because we're afraid that we might mess them up. Um, but then they're going to have our tendencies. So if we're worried that we're going to mess them up, there is no one, most of the time, there's no one better equipped to understand your child's symptoms other than you. And so what that means is sometimes saying, I'm going to mess this kid up, and leaving this isn't always what they need. Sometimes when they start going through their bloodline traits, their bloodline characteristics and things like that, they need you to help them understand it. If you grew up seeing ghosts or having psychic abilities, then what's going to happen is your child is going to end up having psychic abilities, and they're not going to understand what they're going through. They're going to seek outside sources to help them understand why they're feeling the way that they feel. And then what's going to end up happening is they're going to have misguided resolutions that most likely will end up destroying them more than you giving them guidance, because you've been through these symptoms your entire life and they've prepared you to help prepare your child to have a more healthier understanding. But also, because you've been through so much stuff, if your children do experience the same tendencies as you, then you could say, hey, um, I understand these tendencies and I got your back on this. I'm going to help you out through this. Or, no, that's when I have to be careful about my words, because then there are going to be people, they're going to be parents that are like, they're going to be parents that are like, oh, well, I did tell them I've been through this when I was your age, and I told them not to do it, and they did it anyway. So I know that's when I have to try and be careful with my words. But it's like when they have certain tendencies or, certain little micro expressions or whatever, just know that you've been equipped to properly handle why they may be expressing things the way that they do. There's always an expression, but there's always a why. Why is that expression there? And a lot of times the why comes from our parents, because we got that source from our parents, but like how we express it can be different. You know what I mean? So just, now I understand Sometimes people will say, my child would be better off without me, and they may leave. And sometimes it does work out, sometimes, but there's going to be a lot of damage left behind, no matter how you look at it or squint. So you just have to really just keep some awareness of. I actually don't know how to properly word this. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's true when parents say, "I'm going to leave," because now sometimes it's just insecurities and they leave, and it's like, no, a parent need child needs you, but sometimes you may leave, and sometimes it actually is true. But like, allow some sense of your child being able to connect with you in some way. Um, yeah, and sometimes they may find you years later. They may say, "Why did you leave? Why did you do this?" And you may say, "Oh, because I wasn't ready to be a parent, or this or that." And sometimes they may understand, sometimes they may not. Sometimes that feeling of, "Hey, this is why I did something," and your child or you as a child will be like, "No, I don't like that you did that. You're a messed up person. I'm mad at you." And it's just like, sometimes your parents are just the way that they are, and they've made peace. Sometimes, you want to make peace, but at the same time, you feel like your feelings don't matter to them. And you feel like the fact that they've found happiness and peace within themselves in a situation that has left you so broken is like the ultimate sense of betrayal. And I know how that can feel. Some Anyway, so just as a parent, understand how your child may feel, and understand how you may feel that they've made so much peace with this situation that's so messed up, and sometimes by you accepting peace, it may feel like a betrayal to yourself because you feel like your pain is unheard and your pain does not matter. As a parent, it is your responsibility to let that pain out on your children. It is your responsibility to share that pain with your children. It is your responsibility to go there emotionally where you need to go with their kid, with your kid, and say, "Hey, I understand how you feel, and I understand that this situation was not right." When you fully connect with them, fully and honestly connect with them, then you guys can work through it and find some sense of forgiveness. As a child, you have to accept your parents' dark side. You have to say, "Okay, we've been through this. We were able to cry it out. We were able to fight it out. We were able to punch it, whatever we need to do." And I know that they truly do feel bad. And we're both in this dark space together once we reconnect. And we both have to move on in a healthy way together. Because this situation has broken both of us. This is a team effort, and both sides have to be able to move on from the darkness together. Even if you guys heal together, you may not always stick together at the end of it, but the healing needs to be done on both or all sides. All right, now to move on to the next. All right, so for my next note, um, Dexter offers Harrison some blueberry pancakes. And he's like, "I'm not 5 anymore." He's like, "No, thank you." But then, as Harrison starts to warm up to Dexter, then by the end of it, he says, "I'll take some regular pancakes." Um, that's progress. That just shows progress in the relationship. And, sometimes you'll tell your child, "Hey, you wanna go watch a movie or maybe play ball or something, and sometimes a child will be happy to say, maybe I'll just come by real quick and say hi. And that's still progress, a little doorway, little baby steps towards something bigger. Not quite to the full blueberry pancake, but regular pancake for now shows progress. At least there's a pancake. Now for the next note. This is at the end of the episode, of episode 2. Dexter starts to get, a little overconfident. He's like, okay, I got my son, and everyone's done looking for Matt and all of this. And he's like, yeah, everyone gave up, so now I'm all good and I'm all happy. And Dad was like, you're really enjoying this, aren't you? That with that look on your face. And then this manifests Kurt's character. Kurt was a manifestation of Dexter's persona, but also Dexter cannot maintain his persona. Also, Dexter cannot maintain his persona simply because he chose the path of his son. He chose the path of his light. And the love that Dexter has for his son ultimately is what reopened the path to Dexter's truth and to Dexter's destiny. And Kurt manifesting in this moment really shows how Dexter has, in his own mind, created this personified fake version of himself, or this weird personified, version of himself that is Kurt. It was Kurt's love for his son, which actually keeps everything going. Same as how Dexter's love for his son keeps everything going. So it's like a little mirror effect of love for your son. His love for his son is ultimately what reopens that doorway to that life. So that's how Kurt got manifested physically. So now we jump to episode 3. I do not remember what episode 3 was. It smoke signals. That's right. Yeah. So now episode 3, smoke signals. And we start this episode off with Dexter and Harrison talking to Harrison's principal, and her name tag or whatever you call it, on the desk says Principal Strode's, of the Easter egg for Laurie Strode's, a character from that Jimmy Lee Curtis played in the Halloween series, another series about a serial killer. Just little Easter egg, Principal Strode's. There was another one. The gossiper at the police station. She's talking about, the Sally at the nail salon. She had to close it down early because of this and that. There's actually a nail salon called Sally's, and forgive me if this is wrong, but I believe Sally was the name of the Trinity killer's wife, from what I understand. So that was just this little Easter egg. I want to say that there is a nail salon called Sally's. So the fact that this character says Sally, who owns a nail salon lady, all that. Um. So yeah, jumping on to the next note. Um, it's important to have your kids back, even if uh, in this scene, Harrison is accused of cheating. He's like, "Oh no, I'm not. I didn't cheat." And Dexter didn't have his back. Dexter didn't say, "Hey, my son did not cheat. My son is not like that. My son is not a cheater." Dexter was like, "Okay, well, take the test again." And Harrison is like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Aren't you supposed to have my back as my parent? Like if I do something, I expect you as my parent to just have my back." Sometimes we have conflicts between what exactly is the right thing to do, what exactly is the wrong thing to do. What is supposed to be good, what is supposed to be bad. there are times when we we are sometimes people are put in these situations when they don't really know entirely, and sometimes they follow different groups, religions or fact or set of principles or whatever guidelines and philosophies that try to differentiate right and wrong. But now, what if you were like, these guidelines told you what was right? This, you know, but then what if by the end of it you are hurting somebody? What if it's just like the whole idea of law enforcement? Not to get off topic, but it's like you have this idea of the principle of law enforcement, which is, oh, they're the law, they're here to protect us. It's like, no, they're here to enforce law, which means, is it really a good thing? Because if the law says to imprison the people, well, the law enforcement would have to enforce the law of imprisonment, and they would treat people in society as a threat. And people would be like, whoa, wait a minute, you can't do this to us. It's like, a lot of people will say I'm a cop because being a cop represents all these good things and justice and protecting people, and that's what I want. But the heart of it is, what if the law changes and the law tells you to do something that ultimately goes against why you invested into that thing in the first place? Anyway, I didn't want to get too off topic, but I brought that up to kind of give a clear example of where I was kind of trying to get to. So in one's heart, they may say, this is right, or that, whatever. This, I think this is right, but the guidelines may say this is wrong. So now at this point, if the law was like, hey, go out and start and messing with this group of people because they're bad now. And if you're like, whoa, wait a minute, no, they're not doing anything wrong. They just look a certain way. They just act a certain way, but they're not doing anything that's bad. They're not hurting anybody. They're not, they're just like, okay, well, now you're the bad person because now you're going against the law. And now because you're not enforcing that or enforcing the rules, now you're seen as the bad person. Now you're seen as like a rebellious person. Now you're the bad guy. Now, when that happens, what if you had a parent or a child or a family member who looked at you and said, oh, so you were a cop, you're in law enforcement, and the law told you that you had to go to this certain ethnic group or this group of hippies or whatever, this faction of people, and you had to go and arrest all of them, or you had to go do something bad to them or whatever. And you as a cop, you need to do what the law tells you to do. And what if your parent or what if your family member looked at you and said, the law told you to do this and you needed to do that and you didn't do it, so now you went against the law, so now you're bad. Like what if your relative or family member told you that, and you would be like, nah, but this group of hippies, this faction, this group of people, they were cool, they were all right, they didn't do anything bad, they're just being them. And something happened politically, and the law was like, we don't like the way these people look, and we just want them to be dealt with in such a cruel way. And I don't believe in that because these are still human beings. But now your family's going to look at you like, oh no, you broke the law. You're not on the right side of justice. Now, I say all that because that's the best example that I can give, and that's basically how it kind of feels in a sense, sort of, when we expect the people that we love to have our back and care about us, because there are times when we do something and it's morally conflicting, when we don't know if it's the right thing to do, we don't know if it's the wrong thing, we're not entirely sure, but we did something, and it's important that we have a family member or relative or people that we feel will have our back, especially our parents. So if we do something wrong and our parents show up, we need to feel a sense of, okay, things went wrong, things went south, but my parent is here, and even though I know what I did was wrong, they still give me a sense of safety, but I do know that I'm in trouble. But they do give me some sense of safety to where I'm not jumping straight into survival mode and doing something completely drastic because I feel like I'm on my own, and if I don't do this myself, then no one else will help me. So just when when a child does something, just be like, oh, okay, just have their back, just so yeah, that was very important to feel like your parent has your back. There was one time when I was accused of stealing at a Walmart. Walmart had open glasses, so customers can grab the games and movies that they want out of the glass case, or movies or games at this point. So every time someone wanted a video game, they had to flag down a worker. The worker had to find the keys. They had to go and unlock the glass doors or whatever, just to give someone a game. At some point, they said it's too much problems, too much trouble. Just let people grab their own games now. Well, apparently they were having some thievery problems, but I went, I got some games, but I ended up buying a 2 liter of soda. And when I went and bought it, this receipt tore, and I know it just sounds bad. It sounds like an excuse, but I got a 2 liter of soda that I was drinking while I was shopping beforehand because I don't know, I was young. I don't know. I'm not thinking of, so I was doing that just by coincidence. The receipt ends up tearing out of the machine, and the workers all like, "Oh, it tore, but I've been having some problems, but it's fine. It should be fine. But if you need, this is my name. And just, if they give you any problems up front, let me know." I was like, cool. So he gave me his name and everything, gave me the receipt. And so I'm in the electronics section. So I go and look at the games, and I'm just like, oh, cool, this game and this game. Well, I go to the gardening section, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can actually walk into the gardening section while I'm holding these things. So I'm like standing there awkwardly, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I walk up to the cashier lady, and I'm just like, yo, I'm not done shopping, but I have all these games, and I have the soda, and the games aren't paid for, but the soda is paid for. Here's the receipt right here, and the guy gave me his name. I know it's torn, but you can see at the very top what it says, and it has the name of the product of the soda. So, it did tear, but here you go. Apparently, she was like, okay, okay, that's fine. But I guess she didn't understand what I was saying. So when I gave it to her and I walked into the gardening section, I was there anyway, very short time, very. And so I was in there. Then I have these people rush up to me. There's like, come with us. I'm like, what? Okay, whatever. So I walk out, and the cashier looks scared, like she's shaking, and she's trying to avoid eye contact. And I'm like trying to talk to her. I was like, "Oh, hey, miss, my stuff that you were holding." And I look, and like these security dudes have it. And I'm just like, "What the heck is going on?" They escort me through the store. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I don't know what kind of trauma response I had. Anyway, went into the office. And while I was in there, they were like, "Oh, you tried to steal all these games." I'm just like, "No, I told the lady I didn't pay for them." She's like, "Oh no, this receipt is torn, and you told her that you bought all the stuff, but all you did was bring this fake receipt and just say that you bought all of it because you tried to steal it." And I was like, "If I tried to steal this stuff and I was in the gardening section, don't you think I would have just walked out of the store?" And right, like you would have think that that would have just shut it down, but they're just like, "Oh no, you just don't know what you're doing." And I'm like, if I was trying to steal something, why would I give it to the cashier? Just think about that for a second. When I was at the door, like I could have just walked out. So they pressed it. They called the cops. Then the cop showed up, and he said that when I talk, my mouth doesn't, it's anyway. So they're like, "Oh, are you trying to steal something in your mouth?" And I'm not gonna go down the whole story, but anyway, the dude was like, "I need you to open your mouth," and I was like, "What?" So I'm freaking out because I'm young. I'm still in school at this point. This is a black cop. not, there was a white cop and a black cop. But anyway, not to get too far off topic, I try to open up my mouth and he's like, open it wider. I try to open it as far as I can. He's like, okay, you want to be difficult then. And he slaps the cuffs on me and he gets kind of forceful about it. At this point, I'm scared and I'm in tears and I'm screaming. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? They end up calling my aunt. They call my parents down. And I'm just like, cool, my parent is here. And I'm just like, I can explain what happened. Now that my mom's here, I'm safe. Like, thank you for having a familiar face in this messed up situation. Like, they slapped handcuffs on me. They, like they're accusing me of stealing. And, it was like, so what really got me is when I tried to tell her, talk to the mom, tell her what happened, she was just upset to the point where she was like, here's what I'm going to do. If you want to steal stuff, I'm going to let them take you down to the police station so they can go ahead and put you in the cell and do what they have to do to teach you a lesson. And I couldn't express to you the level of betrayal that I felt in that moment. And I was trying to beg her and tell her what happened. And, I was trying to find the words to be like, I didn't steal anything. I've I was trying to steal, they wouldn't have caught me. If I was trying to steal, I would have walked right out of the door. Like there's so many things I could have done. I could have opened the case. Like there's so many things I could have done if I wanted to steal, but that wasn't my intention. That wasn't in my thought process. But I couldn't tell you the level of betrayal that I felt when I was like, these random people put me in this scary situation. And, I was just doing my own thing. And it may have seemed like what I was doing was wrong, just how with Harrison, it seemed like he was cheating. He took the test and then he scored low, took the test again and scored really, really high. And they were just like, according to these papers, according to the situation, we think that he got on the internet and he cheated. And even though it seemed like the pattern was there that he was cheating, just like with me, it seems like all these random pieces of a pattern happened to where it pointed to me stealing stuff. It was like, nah. So then put into the situation, we have to sit down and talk to these people, authority people, and then having your parent side with them in a situation like that. That was terrible. That is terrible. And um yeah, that is a reference that I wanted to share with you guys. Uh okay, sorry about those two taps. My microphone actually died. Luckily, I caught it right when it died. I didn't keep recording. There have been times when my recorder died and it was like 40 minutes past. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to give you that reference to my person, to my life, and how it felt when my parent didn't have my back. That's the story that came to mind. I'm sure I have others, but it is what it is. Anyway, for the next note for episode 3, um, children should always be in activities that invest the best parts of who they are. So it is important to have your children, like, I believe, yes, this is when Harrison was starting his whole wrestling thing with Logan. Logan was like, hey, Dexter, you should let Harrison join the wrestling team. You know, um, it really teaches this and teaches that, lets out aggression, whatever, everything he was saying. So yeah, it's important to and put your kids in situations or activities that invest the better parts of who they are. Now, I understand that there is a big problem with this. Now, this may be slightly off topic, but I know that there's a big problem with this because when it comes to traditions, people have a hard time with these thing called gender roles. And sometimes it's not the thing, it's the relationship with the thing. And so sometimes when you have a child or someone who, you say, okay, this here's something that could help you with the feminine side of who you are. Here's a side that can help you with the masculine side of who you are. Here's something that we as people understand about the human race and human psychology and all this stuff and all these things about, certain behavior patterns, whatever. And we're going to put you in a situation that's going to invest those parts of who you are simply to help those parts of you evolve in better ways. So it's like we're doing these things to help honor and acknowledge the fact that this is who you are. This is, as a man, these are certain traits that you may naturally lean toward. So here's some things that can help those parts of your masculinity develop and stay active and grow, so that way you can grow into a healthy man, versus here's some things that will help you grow and invest your femininity, but you may be a man, but you've invested so much in your feminine side that you don't grow up to be a healthy man. You've now grown up with so much of a mixture that you can't fully embody your own natural sense of power within yourself. Now, some people have a problem with that and they're just like, oh no, F gender roles, forget gender roles, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's about openly acknowledging and honoring and allowing one or multiples to invest in parts of themselves that, if they're not properly developed, may ultimately harm them or cause certain deficiencies in development. And therefore, when they start to get older, those deficiencies will cause certain dysfunctions or may lead to someone feeling lost or not quite right, or they may feel misunderstood, or they may feel like the world doesn't understand me, the world doesn't understand who we are. It's like the world understands. That is exactly why the world is the way that it is, because it found a stable way to help you invest and honor certain parts of you. But if you don't see it that way, you're going to see it as you being put in a box, or you being attacked. Now, whether or not that's true, now just look at it from this point of view. If certain gender roles or certain roles were put upon people so that way it can help them invest and develop in so many ways, help young women develop in certain ways, or help your young son develop in certain ways, or children, um, don't think of it as, oh, well, they just want to put our children in a box, or they just want to put us in a box and, control it. Just think of it as, don't look at why this is look at why it has worked. Look at why it works, not so much as how it doesn't. You know what I mean? Now, what I mean is, try and figure out why, find a healthy reason to understand why something is put in place. Because when we look at these roles or traditions in such a negative way, then why those traditions or roles worked are going to be seen as bad, and we're going to antagonize them. And whatever benefit those things had, we're not going to see them, and we're going to end up distorting them and destroying things and breaking them apart. Some people say that's the point. We want to destroy these roles, we want to destroy these things. And it's like, but you're destroying why they worked. So instead of just seeing it as bad, how about you learn from it? Learn why traditions are there, learn why practices are there, learn why certain things are there. Look into the eyes of honor, of honoring oneself, and say, hey, I feel this way. What in the world is available? What is available in the world that can help me invest into these feelings that I think I'm deficient in? And once you pursue that thing, you'll realize, oh, snap, the thing that I feel like would help honor who I am already exists in the world. I just never saw this concept or this situation in that way. So I never thought that this thing is actually what I needed to help me develop in a healthy way. I just looked at it as it was trying to suppress me or keep me in a box. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's so just um yeah, it's important to have activities for your children that will help them develop in directions that will help them invest into better parts of who they are and who they can be. That's why it's very important to keep your children in school, help them get their diploma, and say, "Hey, get your diploma, get your high school diploma. From there, if you want to go into college, if you don't want to go into college, you at least have opportunities. You have opportunities to explore different things. You know what I mean? So, so just yeah, I guess that's all I can really say about that. Just if you see your kids doing certain things, just help invest them in that direction. I just talked just yesterday. I talked to this woman. She had her son had an obsession with Pokemon growing up, and then he got older and was like, "Make it all go away. Just sell everything. Sell all of my Pokemon stuff." I was like, "Okay, I'll take it. I'll give you half in a few days, half now, half later." So I did that, and she was like, "I spent so much money on this. I spent so much money on all this Pokemon stuff throughout all the years." And it was like, "Yeah, you supported your kid, and you supported what was important, and that was good. And now that feeling that he had, that obsession, whatever, that feeling, that passion, it's evolved into something else now, or a different direction, or it's not the same, but you were there and you fully invested in what he needed for his development at the time." That's important. Next line. Yeah, so Audrey goes into the back and sees the white deer still hanging, and she's like, "Why is this white deer that got shot still hanging in this meat locker?" And then the butcher was like, "Oh, because it's technically evidence, so we can't get rid of it because we can't tamper with evidence, so we have to keep it frozen." She's like, "Nah, this animal, you know." So she gets the animal, takes it out to it was a sacred deer, white sacred deer. So they take it out and have a ceremony for it and everything. And you know, Audrey is very much into culture, into her Native American roots, and her certain values when it comes to her bloodline and family and all this stuff. And she really takes it seriously. She takes the language seriously. The you know the all the, she takes it seriously. And the parent may not be fully connected with that lifestyle or with it, but it's important to still be there for your child and say, "Okay, you're into this. You're into this. I support you in that. I got you." um, but uh, but yeah, just be careful because I know that can be translated into, "What about video games? Video games are bad, and my child's passionate about video games. They like games, and I want to buy them. How do we know if they're good or they're bad?" Like, uh, you know, I this is more like certain things like passions, like skills, like drawing stuff, um, maybe even some anime, maybe, but like it's just certain skills that they may have, things like that, or passions, or culture, or reading, music, things like that. But like video games cause a lot of problems. You be just be aware of the stuff, but still do just and when your child does do something like what Audrey did with the white deer, Angela was like, "Why didn't you come to me, as your mother? I'm not trying to do some Jedi mind trick. Why'd you do this thing and not tell me? And Audrey was like, sorry, but I had to get this done and this and that. And Angela didn't antagonize her daughter. Angela said, okay, well, you did this thing and you felt it was right. And the thing is, I agree with you. What you did was right, you felt it was right and you did it and and me, I agree with you on this situation. And she was like, you didn't open up to me. And, Audrey was like, sorry, but I thought this and that. And so Angela was like, even though we both agreed, even though they both agreed, Angela allowed that safe space to where Audrey can say, okay, I did something wrong. I didn't share it with you. Sorry, mom. And her mom, Angela, was like, it's okay. I agree with you. And I understand that, there's a lot of messed up situations and sometimes things aren't, can't be done in a certain way, but, you did it. And, I agree with you morally. And, just allow that safe space to allow your child to say, okay, I didn't know if I could trust you on this level, but now that I've been caught, I've been busted. Um, my parent opens up to me and says it's okay that you did this thing. Um, I got you. It's okay to feel safe to open up with me in this area of your life. I promise I'm not bad. I promise I'm not always against you. I agree with you. Some things are just out of my control, but I do agree with you 100%, and I don't want us to fight. I want us. So yeah, keep that in mind. Last note for episode 3. At the end of this episode, Dexter says, "Sorry, I didn't have your back before," and turns out Harrison scored bigger. And he said, they made me take the test again. I scored even better. And at the end, Dexter says, sorry I didn't have your back, but this is me having your back from now on. And then Harrison is like, thanks, Dad. He's like, Dad, my new favorite word. Um, yeah, have your child's back. It's important. Now, jumping to episode 4. I believe this is called H for or Hero, or H is for Hero. I believe that's the name of this episode. And this is when, or this might be a little bit too early. But yeah, so for episode 4, you never know what your kid knows. So if your kid knows a secret and you try to keep that secret from them, you don't know. They probably know. You don't know what they know. So don't always try to keep things secret and constantly lie to them. If you don't have to lie, just don't do it. They may already know the secret that that you're trying to keep. They may already know the secret that you're trying to keep. Just don't lie about that. So for my next note, this is actually an Easter egg. Um, when Dexter and Harrison are bonding over Deb, he's like, "Oh, she said I'd rather put a campfire out with my face." This happened in season 5, and this is something that Deb actually said to Batista. I'd rather put a campfire out with my face, and this was the episode or around the time when Batista punched that cop out and LaGuerta had to work undercover with that guy, with that dude, and Batista didn't know what was going on, and she thought maybe LaGuerta was cheating on him with this dude. So Batista goes up to Deb and is like, "Hey, the cop over there, the dude that LaGuerta's talking to, my wife. Would you ever, do you find him attractive or cute?" And Deb was like, "Oh, I'd rather put a campfire out with my face." So if anyone was wondering about that reference, where it came from, what episode, it was in season 5, around that time. So early season 5. Next note. Your children will eventually learn the truth from somewhere. So if you're trying to hide something from them, they will eventually find it somewhere. They may even find it when you're not even around anymore. And that's going to suck if they find the truth and they're just trying to confront you or talk with you about it. You're not even around anymore. Like, you can't always just die with certain secrets with you in your grave. Your life is your life. Life needs to always be expressed. Life needs to always be open. Life needs to always be free. If not, then it's just the walking dead. It's just death. And secrets, a lot of times secrets are just killing. They're slow parasites. So when you're trying to keep secrets, you just don't. If you don't have to, be open with your kids, be open with your children. Stop trying to make life so perfect for them. Stop trying to make life so perfect for everyone and let them live their lives. This, it's just like if you had like a Bible, like the Bible, and God was like, "Hey, here's the Bible. Live a perfect life." And it's like everyone's like, "Oh, a perfect life. Oh, I want that." And it's like when you try to have perfection with your child's life, it's eventually going to lead to bigger problems. And if they feel like they can't, you just don't try to make life so perfect. Stop trying to live, just stop trying to make everything so perfect and 100% good. Everyone has their own individuality, and it's important to understand that your children are going to go through so many things with themselves, with life, with others, and just stop trying to make life so perfect because there's so much inside all of us as individuals that need to be lived, that need to be explored, that needs to be cleansed, that needs to be understood. And life, love, is never going to expand if you don't give it a chance to live. So you have to let it live, you have to let it out, you have to you have to create these healthy boundaries so that when the truth does come out, what needs to be said can be said, what needs to be done can be done, then everyone can just move on peacefully or live peacefully together. It sucks, it's sad when families fight each other over something so stupid or so dumb, and they go years, sometimes a lifetime, without talking to each other. Then someone's on their deathbed and they're dying and people are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And it's like, you guys, us as a species, as humans, need to have better boundaries with people and better understanding of the human condition instead of looking at things in such intense right or wrong, such intense perfection, such intense this is how things should be, this is how things shouldn't be. And sometimes we go through so much pain that what we feel is right is actually just the insecurity that we have inside, and we are so insecure about something, or unsecure about something, I should say. We're so unsecure about it that it ends up guiding our entire moral compass of what we think is right or what is wrong. When really it's just the fact that we don't know how to handle these feelings, we don't understand it, and the only thing, the closest understanding that we have of it has been through a past experience or what we've been told. Oh, this is wrong or that's wrong, or we may have these emotions or feelings that we want to express, and then we do it. A majority of the world is going to say you're wrong for that, you're terrible for that, and now you may think that you're a terrible person because you have these feelings. Now you demonize yourself. Like, the whole art of perfection is not good. And so when it comes to us being careful with with our children, sometimes that's not what we need to do, because when we try to be so very careful, we're like really acknowledging that what we're having is a fragile thing. And love should never be, love is fragile, but love is also enduring. So by trying to be so fragile, especially when children when we get older, when they're little, then yeah, be careful. But like, you know but just at the same time, just know when to be careful, and know when someone is mature enough to handle a situation. Like trying to teach kids nowadays about a lot of there's a lot of hatred toward this group of people. There's a lot of hatred and discriminacy toward gay people or LGBTQ people, or and it's like a lot of young people I've noticed are growing up with, oh, these people are treated bad, and they're on the defensive of, oh, this person's homophobic, that person said something bad about gay people, that person. It's like why are there young children fighting this weird battle about this weird discrimination thing? Like that is like trying to tell a child about stuff like this when they're not mature enough to handle it. Now that's different, because then they grow up with, oh, we're growing up with this group of people being oppressed. We're growing up with it. It's like, no, because at that point, you're just going to grow up with that mentality of victimization, or that these people are victims. You're not going to grow up with, what did these people overcome? What You're not going to grow up with, oh, they came from this, but now what's the strength that can be built from that? None of that is happening when you tell these young people they're too young to understand this stuff. They're going to grow into the oppression. They're going to grow into the victim mentality, and that's how they're going to see themselves. Now, being a black person, that is understandable, and it sucks being black and growing up with so much psychological warfare and emotional warfare, and seeing the same thing be done to other groups, to certain groups in LGBTQ and all that stuff. And when I see it being done, recreated in them, it's like, ah, see, us as black people, we know how we've been used as products. We understand how certain promotions of us in the public eye was used for a certain agenda. And they told us, oh, it's a loving thing, it's a caring thing. They gave us those little bit of crumbs as, oh, there you go, you're good. And then once I'm seeing it being expressed in other factions and groups and other groups of people, I'm just like, ah, they're falling for it. And then I see it, but then if you say something about it, they'll look at you as if you're the enemy. And it's like they're not building you up. They're giving you crumbs to keep you satisfied, but they're not trying to, so just understand that there's a level of maturity when it comes to teaching children certain things. So yes, just be careful, be mindful. But yeah, also learn to create freedom and allow freedom to come in, and allow the exploration of freedom of thought. Just allow it to, and just give it some positive direction. Don't just keep it in the negative. It's okay to have. It's okay to teach the hardships of the past, to remember why we're strong now. Now that's important, because with history being rewritten for the new generation of children, and for black history starting to be taken out, and being retold in history books and things like that, like, oh, it's just bad, and they don't need to know, and black people don't need to know about it. It's like at the same time, a lot of black people who understand where they came from and understand their ancestry understand the strength that they're able to overcome. They understand the strength that they're able to conjure from within. And if they have no links to that past, if they have no connection to those ancestors, if they have no connection to the ancestral spirits, then you are actually disempowering an entire group of people. You are disempowering tradition. You're disempowering an entire race of people, an entire generation of people. And that's what's being attacked now. So when it comes to stuff like that. Just really analyze everything that I just said. Not going to go into it any further. Moving on to the next line. Um, this goes more into Audrey also getting into her roots of Native American, staying connected to her roots and things like that, and doing certain traditional things, saying traditional things to really stay connected to that. So yes, this is still on point to what I'm saying. It's just a deeper dissection into it. Anyway, so yeah, eventually, if your children feel like they can't share their darkness with you, they will share their darkness with someone else. They will find someone to share it with. Be careful with that, because if they are feeling a certain way and they feel like they can't come to you and they go to the wrong person, then that person may be like, "Oh man, you're crazy, you're wild. I can't believe you just said that." and and eventually there may be little details, here and there, and they may say, little things may happen here, little things may happen there, and eventually something bad may happen later on down the line. And a lot of people will be like, well, look at the clues of what he said to this person, that person, this person, that person. It all comes together and fits like a puzzle. It's like, oh no, they shared their darkness with different people in the moment, trying to figure out why they're feeling this way, thinking that they can trust these people, but now something went wrong. And all those people they thought, all these people were just like, oh yeah, he had this tendency, or he said this off the wall thing. And what was once fun and games, what was once trying to connect with someone on an intimate level, what was once I'm confused about these feelings and I can't come to my parents, so I'm going to this resource, to this person, maybe I can talk about it. Now it just became a whole sense of betrayal, and it's all just redirected against you, against your child or something. And it's like, oh man, I didn't my child didn't feel safe enough to come with me with this, and they went to the internet, they went to an AI program, they went to this person, and the wrong person got to them, and now they said something and they did something, and it ended up bad, ended up creating a whole tragic situation, and now a lot of these things are going against my child. And you know um, sometimes your child may open up to the wrong person, and that person may end up leading your child into an even darker path. I say that because whereas the bullies were bullying, um, the guy who was accused of being the shooter, Ethan was his name. Like Ethan, Ethan was bullied, and he had his thoughts, and he, Ethan didn't feel comfortable sharing his darkness with his parents. And so he ends up bottling up inside and doing all these drawings and all this stuff. And then what ends up happening is Harrison gets involved. And now Ethan feels like he can open up to Harrison. Well, now by doing that, with Harrison having his own darkness, it ends up feeding on, Ethan's darkness ends up kind of feeding off of um, Harrison. And it becomes a whole messed up situation. And now people are looking in the book and they're just like, oh, look at this book, and it has all these messed up drawings, and Ethan was crazy and all this stuff. And now, where Ethan had this darkness inside of him that was pent up, he got involved in someone who ended up escalating that darkness. And instead of going to the parents, instead of going to someone who knew what they were doing, instead of going to someone who was beyond what they knew, you know, instead of telling an adult, telling someone, searching for help, they just tried to handle it on their own. And you can't do that. You can't do that. Anyway, so now Ethan's parents, they're like, you saved a bunch of people. apparently, he said to a bunch of people, "We don't ever want to see you again." And their parents had to move. The parents lost their shop, and Ethan had to be sent away. And it was like, man, all this, all this because no one was told, an adult wasn't told, and apparently, he didn't feel safe opening up this dark side with his parents and things like that. And all of these different pieces of evidence were put against Ethan. There was a list, and everyone was like, "Oh, there's a kill list. He was going to shoot all these people." And you never know. Maybe it was just dark thoughts that he had, but he probably never would have acted on it. It's just probably a list of people he didn't like. It's probably just his. But anyway, I don't wanna go there. But the main point of bringing that up is that sometimes there could be a lot of evidence, and yeah, it could be warnings. Pay attention to the warning signs. That's very important. At the same time, there could be little things that you may think are innocent, and when something serious does happen along the lines, a lot of random pieces that you left behind could be used as evidence against you at the end of the road, and you'll be like, "Oh man, I didn't know I set myself up for failure this whole time, and an accident happened, but now, it's it all, anyway, something interesting about that hit list, though, that list of students' names was most of those names were names of old, famous baseball players from the 80s. So, yeah, that was most of the names that were on that list. Now, moving on to the next. Yeah, so the next note was, yeah, your kids may sometimes explore darkness with each other. Just, yeah, went over that. Just be careful with that. And the next, yeah, respect your kids' privacy. Please respect your kids' privacy. It's something I've never had. Um, there are times when I'm on the phone in my vehicle. Yeah, like there are times when I want to get on the phone and talk to somebody, and when I'm trying to talk in the house, sometimes people are listening to my conversations, and I'm like, why? So I go upstairs, lock myself in the room. Sometimes I'll be downstairs and I'll get a phone call, and I have to go upstairs. I have to lock myself in the room just to get on the phone call. And then there's, why are you doing that? Why are you being so secret? It's like, okay, like I just want some privacy. And it's like, why do you want privacy? What are you doing that's so suspicious? If there's nothing suspicious going on, then why do you need privacy? I've gotten that, and it's like, come on, that's like, bro, like back off. I just want to be on the phone. Sometimes someone important will call, a job will call, my bank will call, and they're just like, "Are you in some kind of trouble? Why is your bank calling you? Why are you getting looking for a new job? What's wrong with the job that you have now? You can't jump from one job to another like that because you don't have a chance to grow." It's like, bro, like, get out of my business. I'm on the phone. I had a phone call that was my business. It got to the point where I had to go outside in my vehicle just to have a phone call. But then I would get phone calls on the other line from my parents, and I'm just like, what the heck? And I'll answer it. They're like, "You've been sitting out in your car for too long. What's going on? Are you all right?" And I'm just like, I do I do this quite often. Like, yes, I am fine. I want to sit in my car. Like, that is something you guys do. If you're on the phone and you come home from work, there are times when you just sit in your car for a while. But yeah, I guess. But yeah, it's like, yeah. So sometimes when I get a phone call or I want to talk to somebody, I will actually drive to a random parking lot, and I will sit there in a random parking lot for a while just to have a phone call. It's like, man, it shouldn't be that way. That's just one example of privacy. Don't get to that point. Like, there are times when my mail was opened, and I'm just like, why am I coming home to my mail being open, to my package being open? and I've been told, I don't know if you're going to get into any kind of trouble, or, oh, I accidentally opened it. Like, how do you accidentally open someone else's mail 12 times? You know what I mean? In like within like a few months. Like, the fact that that was happening, I could go on to other things. I would sometimes, not to get too personal with that one, but sometimes I would close my bathroom, and because my dog will go in there and lock himself in my bathroom and dig in my trash can and start pulling stuff out. Then I just find stuff from my trash can all over the house, and I'm like, bro, I just came in from work. Why do I have stuff from my trash can all over the house? And like, oh, that's your stuff. Go throw it away. It's like, I locked my door. I kept it closed. Yeah, but we feel like you shouldn't have your door closed. I don't like closed doors in my house. It's like, ah. So I'm like, it's just like at that point I have to do something else, try and avoid that. And it's like I can go down the list. I can go down a huge list, but not respecting your child's privacy can go down to some situations where you feel like it makes sense for you, when really it could just be very not. It's just not right. Just let your children have their privacy. Knock on their door. Don't just bark. Just let your children have their privacy. Let them just feel safe when they need to feel safe. There's a time when I went through something that was so horrible, and it violated my sense of it broke my entire like sacredness that one has with their own body type of thing. I had a violation that went against my private my me. And when I'm like, okay, someone violated, me on such a deep level, I need privacy, because I just sometimes need to be safe in my own space for a while, because that door was opened to where one can feel, like they've been so violated to the point that, it's like I feel like I have no private space to call mine. And as a parent, you may not know that. They may not want to open that door with you, because that could be their darkness. And if they do open up that door with you, it may make it even worse. They may not be ready to forgive you, or have the ability to forgive, or have the ability to maintain the better parts of themselves if they open up their darkness to you and you reject it, or you don't know how to handle it. You may have the best of intention, but don't know how to handle what they're going through and handle it as best you can. And that may be the thing that destroys them. They may subconsciously know that, which is why they are being secretive about it, and they're keeping it private. But then if you put them in on the spotlight like a deer in the headlights, or you corner them like a wild raccoon, nothing good is going to come from that. You see what I'm saying? Privacy for children is very important. Now I understand that there was no big scene in Dexter that did that, except for the fact that Dexter knocks on Harrison's door, and Harrison was like looking at his blade, and he was like, "Oh, come in." And then Dexter opens up after his son says, "Oh yeah, come in." It's important, That's just that one scene just had a huge trigger for me, which is probably why I wrote it down. But just have some privacy for your kids, and don't say, "Oh, I want to protect you." It's like, ugh, just just let your kids have some privacy. And when they want it when they share with you what they want to, they will. Just let them feel safe doing so. next next note. Um, it's important to give your children something intimate to connect with, um, or to connect with on an intimate level. Yeah, just find some kind of memory that you can connect with them, or a situation or a moment. And they may be like, yo, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever felt that way? If you say, nope, I never have, but I'm still here if you need to talk. And it's like, no, it's like, okay, time to shut down again. Just give them a memory or a story or something to connect with. It may be a hit, it may be a miss, but at least you tried. Um, you know, yeah, just give your kids something to connect with on an intimate level. Give them some piece of you, some part of you that is real and honest that they can connect with on a very deep level. And the deeper you guys can connect, then the closer you guys will be. Next line. This gets into more darker territory. H is for hero. Dexter was jealous. There's a type of jealousy where Dexter has always wanted to be seen as a hero, as a good person. You see this at the end of season one, when he has his illusion, when everyone's has their signs and they're thanking him. They're like, "Oh, go Dexter," and they're happy for him. And you see this again in New Blood when Deb has her balloons and her signs and go Dexter, and Dexter's always wanted to be seen as as a Dark Defender, as a hero of some sort. But everything that he's ever wanted, everything he's ever wanted to be, now his son is getting there, and so that does create some dark, kind of borderline messed up emotions that Dexter doesn't entirely know how to deal with. And so, as Harrison is like said, his gave a story. Dexter's like doing this whole analyzing thing, and Deb's like, "Yo, like you just can't stand that you've always wanted to be this way and you never got there, but your son was able to get there. Just be happy that your son, that it happened. Just be happy that it happened." I'll give you a true story. There was a true story. There's a movie called The Land Before Time, which is actually playing in anyway, the movie called Land Before Time. There's a character in there named Ducky, and she was played by a young girl. And what happened was, the girl who did the voice of Ducky, she her parents didn't really have a lot of money, from what I understand. They're their parents. Her father worked very hard, and her father, worked all these jobs and did this and that, and had a very hard time, a very hard time supporting his family. But then, um, his daughter got the voice of Ducky from this movie. Um, and so when she did the voice and she got a lot of money. They're like, "Oh, there you go, boom!" And she was like, "Oh, whoa, money." And so her dad was like, "Yo, I worked hard and I did all this stuff and I, sacrificed and worked hard and this, and I couldn't, you know, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this money is." So the daughter voice acted and got some money for the family, and the father got jealous of it, and the father ends up brutally murdering his daughter. He killed her simply because she got some money. She was 10 years old, and yeah, her father. Yeah, her father killed her. Her name was Judith, Judith, Judith Barcy, and yeah, she was starting off as a voice actress and made a way for her family. And her dad was like, "Oh no, you." So yeah, when it comes to your child being something, being successful, achieving something that you never did, just don't be so crazy about it. Because yeah, this girl did that to support her family and was murdered by her dad. So yeah. Anyway, be happy for your children when they accomplish something, and if you never did, be proud of them for it. Be like, oh, they don't have to go through what I went through. Just be proud. Next thing, next line is this was the scene where Dexter and Kurt talked on Dexter's porch. There's a lot of value that can be seen in that moment, in that conversation, and I feel like the writers have done their job. So I won't really say too much about that. But, there is something about that scene where Kurt says, whenever your child does do something bad, somewhere down the line you'll feel like, it was your fault. And that goes into there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher type thing. Uh, but I feel like there's a lot of value there, but just, try not to feel too guilty about things. Love is good, love is important, but also so is discipline. Sometimes we get mixed, sometimes we get kind of lost in that realm, though, of love is always going to be there. So discipline is always going to come first. And I've been guilty of that with my dog, which I kind of had to be because I loved him. I do love him, I care about him. At the same time, he's a very stubborn animal. And I know that I have to have that structure with him because if not, he will get himself into trouble. And I've tried to, and I've done my best. I've tried, and as I've tried to give him discipline, and I tried to keep the discipline first with him and I, so he wouldn't misbehave, and the love was always going to be there. But I had to make sure every single day to keep that discipline in line. My parents didn't really understand that, and they spoiled him behind my back. They treated him a certain way. They would go against his schedules that I would give him, his feeding schedules. They would hide snacks. They would hide treats. I confronted them about it, and they're like, okay, we'll stop. And then I ended up with finding a stash. I ended up finding a stash of treats. They would give him so many treats that he would go through like two, maybe three entire bags within like a week or a week and a half. And I'm like, are you guys feeding him these as if they're food? So all of the discipline that I had for him, it started to slowly leave him. And my discipline only worked when on certain times, and with other people he just felt like he could do whatever he wanted to and act whatever however he wanted to with other people, and not, and I tried to tell them don't do that because he needs to understand how he needs to be around people, and I need you guys to help me out with that as I'm raising him. Treat him like this, treat him like that. Make sure he knows that this is a household thing, not just a me and him thing. There are certain things that are between me and him as his master, but there are certain borders, certain foundations that he needs to understand when it comes to interacting with other people. And I need you guys' help with helping me work with that. And they're like, okay, but then they never did. And so they went against everything, and now he has all these behavioral issues. His leash training got undone. I got him trained on the leash. I got him trained on doing certain tricks, and they're just like not honoring, not practicing that with him. And I would try to make him do tricks, and then I'll give him a treat, and he'll just be like, I don't need to do tricks to get a treat. What are you doing? And I would have to keep hammering it in his head after a while. And I'm just like, why is he being stubborn? It just got worse over time. And it got to the point where he's got out of control now. And it got to a point where he actually got hit by a van. There's been a time when he ends up eating a dead animal that was on the side of the road. It got to the point where he started rolling around in random feces that were everywhere. There was a time when he almost got attacked multiple times, or he almost got eaten by coyotes. And I'm like, why, why are you guys not listening to me? Like, so yeah, it's like all of these bad things ended up happening to him is because they didn't reinforce the structure that I tried to force on him. You know, well, not force on him, but try to give him. And it was like, wow, so now he almost died multiple times. I don't know if he has some kind of disease, and it was just very hurtful. It's painful, you know. So you know, it just hurts. So in that scene, it's just sometimes we will be too much about structure and discipline, and it'll get to the point where we don't show the love. But it's important to show the love and the discipline. But yeah, so that's it for that. Episode 5. Um, okay, I think I'm done with that. So that was all I had for episode 4. Episode 5 is The Runaway. Uh, be careful about judging your kids and judging their life, and just be careful about judging your kids. Just try not to. Try to be more understanding. Try leaning more toward the understanding part of judgment instead of, oh, I know they can do better, so I'm gonna just kind of give them, some tough love or something. Or some kids react well to that, some don't. But understand what works for them, not for what worked for you, what you think may work for you, or if you're like, oh, I was yelled at, I was shot and stabbed, and I turned out all right. It's like you didn't turn out all right. You just didn't die. You know, it, um, there's a difference in living a certain quality of life. Don't try to remember the scene in which of the judge judging your kids. I believe this comes from Dexter maybe accusing Harrison of stabbing Ethan or cutting Ethan, and he's like, oh, so now you're gonna think I'm a freak too. You're gonna judge me, think that I'm weird just like everyone else. Sometimes children just need love. You don't need judgment. Um, support your next line. Support your kids, whether you understand them or not. Whether you understand what they're doing, understand why they're doing it. Just support them, as I've said before, with the whole Pokemon collection and all that. Just support them. Support if their culture, if they want to get a job somewhere, if they want to do something. Just help support them. Um, yeah. So be careful about restricting your kids to so much. If you keep them on a short leash, you'll end up losing them forever. You know, let them have a sense of freedom. When they feel like they haven't grown up with it, then they'll be like, I feel so trapped, and I want to experience more in life, but I don't know how to find that feeling to properly manifest it in my life. So just know that it's your responsibility to help give them feelings that they need to be familiar with to grow a healthy adulthood. Sometimes the goal is not to have a happy child. Sometimes the goal is to raise healthy adults. I know a lot of parents who've talked about that. That's how they raise their children, is to be healthy adults. So that way they grow up with healthy boundaries. Um, talk to your kids about drinking and drugs, and you know a lot of times we will run away from our problems by choosing drugs and things like that and drinking. It's like you're not really running away from anything. You're just investing more into what this thing is making you feel inside. A lot of times we think that we're running away from problems when really we are just we're just making it even bigger. We're running into it. And when we run into it, it just becomes bigger and bigger. And we think, oh, we're running away. It's like, nah, have you ever, like, stood in front of a lamp or stood like under a light, and your shadow was just like, you know, right there. But then as soon as you run or walk away from that light or the lamp, your shadow actually grows bigger and bigger right in front of you. It's basically like that, you know, when you try to it's just like that. Just like when Dexter was like, "Oh," or Harrison was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go do these drugs real quick," and these are people that I know. It's like, yeah, but the drugs they were from someone random, and the drugs were laced with something, fentanyl, and whereas Harrison's friends were like, "Oh, it's okay, it's just drugs. We're all gonna have fun." It was like it was laced with something more serious. That stuff is serious. I've lost someone close to me. Very, very much into video games. Very much into Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, all of it. And he was like, you know what? I'm running low on weed. I'm running low. And they sold their sister stuff. They sold, you know, from game system, from GameCubes, PlayStations, PlayStation multiple times, PlayStation 3. One of my PlayStations got sold at one point, and cards got sold. And it was like when we were young, we had fun with Pokemon cards. Me and my friend, we had fun with Pokemon cards and with our Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And my friend, my homie, was like, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna sell these and get me some weed real quick." And they would go and they would smoke weed, and it was like, okay, but we can't play cards anymore. Who am I gonna play cards with? There were times when we would play video games, and he would sell their games. And it's like, oh man, we can't play this game together no more. You know, there were times when we would sometimes go watch a movie, and they would get high, and we would be watching a movie or something. Be like, oh, we'll watch a show that we've been watching, and we wait like, okay, we got a whole week. Wait the whole week. We go over there, and they're watching it, and they're being weird, and he's like, yeah, I'm actually high right now. I'm sorry, I can't really comprehend what's going on. It's like, oh, come on, bro. I waited an entire week to watch this with you. And it would just happen so much over the years, growing up, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just weed. It's just normal." It's like, nah, man. I lost my best friend. We slowly cards disappeared. The childhood memories, the childhood bonding, they all disappeared from these drugs. My aunt had a coworker, and they worked a lot together. And but they never hung out, and they always talked about hanging out. And then her son, my aunt's, they always have talked about going out and everything. But her my aunt's coworker's son got a hold of some weed, and weed. I'm not talking, and this was before spice was a bit. This was weed. This was back many years ago. So he ends up getting some weed, smokes some weed, and flips out, and ends up. I think it was a machete. Ends up hacking his mom, and they had a good relation. Apparently, they had a good relationship. He got some weed and got high, and just something about that high, which is bad, and got a machete and killed his mom right there in the house. Just killed her, cut her up, and walked around the neighborhood with covered up in his mom's blood, just singing and dancing. Eventually, cops had to get called on him, and he got arrested, and he was like not even acknowledging what he did. And he's just like, "Oh, where's mom? When's she gonna come in?" And Eventually, he had a sister, and eventually she had to stop seeing him in prison because the fact that he murdered their mom and got arrested, and he's not even acknowledging that he did it, and he's just confused about why he's even in jail. So when people come to me and they say, "Oh, it's just weed," it's like, no, it's not just about that. I've lost people. I've seen some tragic things happen over just weed. People have been killed for just weed. I'm not going to name names, but there was a young person who borrowed some money from someone I know and um wanted some weed and was like, "Oh, let me go pay you back real quick." And it was one day, and kid, just kid, didn't even have a job, just shot dead in the street. I'm just like, bro, what the heck? And the person that I knew, like I said, I'm not selling my relationship to this person who they were, but right there in the street, just shot this poor kid. He got arrested, of course, not getting away with with just that and smoking weed to where someone their animal found their stash and ate their whole bag of stash and almost died. And it's like when I hear people talk about weed is okay, it's like nah. So when you start talking about drugs and trying to tell kids why drugs are not good, it's like it's not a fun. It's just it's not harmless. You know, like, and the bad thing about drugs, I will say this and then I will move on. The bad thing about drugs is you think about what keeps you away from drugs, what morally keeps you away from doing drugs. What boundaries do you set up to say, you know what, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to mess with that. I don't want no weed. I don't want no drugs. I don't want that anywhere near me. Now, just think about what you feel, why you put those boundaries up in the first place. Now, the first time you try weed, you're just like, oh, it's not that bad. Everything that you had that pushed drugs and weed against out of your life, all of those boundaries that you had, everything, the moral code that you had, all of that takes a back seat now because you've proven to yourself that this drug that you've tried takes more priority than all of those guidelines that you had that were a foundation for whatever it was you were protecting, that you knew that the drugs would threaten in you. So once you say I have strong boundaries and you try that drug and you say, "Oh, this isn't so bad," that drug now takes priority of all of your boundaries. So now all of those boundaries that you have set up, you've now taught your brain that they will take a back seat in other situations in life. And now this thing that you're trying to get, that drink, that weed, that smoke, that hit now takes precedence now. Now you're training your brain neurologically. I've seen it be done. I've seen people be respectful and nice, even my friends, and they've tried drugs and they've been like, it wasn't so bad. And now they are trying to convince our other friends to try drugs. Now, and I'm just like, bro, back in the day, you were strongly against drugs for so many reasons. Now you've tried one, and now you are starting to try others because, and it's like, and now you're starting to try and tell other people that have never tried it, who don't want to try it. You're trying to tell them and convince them, oh, it's okay, it's all right, you know. And you try to tell them, oh, just do it around someone that you trust. Try to do it around someone that. It's like, no, stop trying to justify it. If there's something that you have to justify, then that means it's not right on its own. It can't stand right on its own. If you have to justify something, that means it can't stay right on its own, which means it is most likely a bad thing. So let's see. The next note I wrote for episode 5. Um, when things are getting too serious, don't try to be a hero. Tell an adult. Don't try to handle things yourself. You can make it worse. Which I I wrote that as a note. That's not like kids are even going to be they're young. I don't even know, but that's just what I wrote. Talk to someone who is more mature in the situation, or maybe talk to someone who is of an authority figure, someone that is in a more mature situation than what you are. If things start to get in a certain way. Um, in this episode, Dexter is a very angry and forceful parent, and he really tries to force control over Harrison. Don't be a controlling parent. Don't do that. Don't be controlling. Just don't. I could give you a whole many multiple life stories. I could give you a whole life story over and over again, different ones about what I've been through. But all I'm going to say is don't be forceful. Don't be angry. Don't, if someone says, hey, I can help you raise your child, don't think you can do it on your own. Don't be prideful and say, get away from me. This is my child. I'm going to do whatever I want. Don't just be like, oh, this is my baby. I'm going to pierce their ears because it's my baby. It's like, but what do they want? Like, it doesn't matter what they want. They're my child. It's like, you're refusing to acknowledge that your child has its own soul. Don't, if someone tries to help you with your child, don't say, I can raise my child the way I want to because I know them best. Don't do that. You're just going to mess up your child even more. You're just going to mess up your relationship with them more. And if not, you're probably going to mess up their relationship with other people. And it's messed up. Some people may hear that and say, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to mess up my child so that way they mess up their own future, so that way they will be reliant on me. You have parents that will do that, purposefully sabotage their child to keep them reliant on them, because maybe the parent doesn't feel like they're anything without their kid. um, so they're like, as long as my kid relies on me, then I am necessary in the world. I am needed in the world. I mean something in the world. But once the kid starts to develop on their own, start to find their independence, you see that as a threat, and you're just like, nah. So then you intuitively purposefully sabotage your child growing up because you feel if they don't grow up right, then their future is going to be sabotaged. They're not going to have any healthy relationships. Therefore, they're going to constantly need you. And I've been through that. I have been through that on multiple levels. Financially, I've been on that on multiple levels, not just relationships, but also when it comes to the household. Many don't do that. The next line, I believe this is the last line for episode 5. It is um sorry, 1 second. Oh, okay, that's why I'm so confused. Okay. Then last line for episode 5. Sometimes you have to be forceful to guide your children, as in your child does something wrong, has a behavior problem. Don't be like, oh, hey, it's okay. Maybe you want to do this. Be like, no, you're being grumpy and you need to go to therapy. I'm taking you to therapy so you can go through this. Sometimes you gotta push them in that direction because sometimes they won't make the right choice for themselves. So you do have to be forceful when it comes to guiding children. You do have to be that authoritative force. And it is important that you give them that authority figure because, there is that masculine feminine type deal when it comes to guidance, and that is with males are more prone to being leaders or being guides or being guided and having a structure and things like that. Whereas a lot of times females or women will feel, oh, you're trying to give me rules to listen to and structures. You're suppressing me and my freedom, and I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to say whatever I want to whomever I want. Have an attitude to whoever. I don't care who they are. I don't care if you're a cop. I don't care if you're my boss at work. I don't care if you're my parent, if you're my child. I don't care who you are. You piss me off. So rah rah. I'm gonna yell it. So just know when to be a proper guide, proper leader in a situation, and just help your children rely on a healthy structure of guidelines versus having them rely on their own chaotic emotions and saying, I have this chaotic, messed up emotion. I'm going to follow it. And whatever domino effects happen, whoever is in the way of what I'm doing, it's too bad for them. It sucks for them. I feel this way and I'm going to act on that unapologetically. And I don't care who gets hurt. Like you gotta be careful about that. I say a reason why I say feminine and masculine is because a lot of women, a lot that I know, that I've talked to, that I've even seen, read art, seen, and a lot of them have said, that they want that sense of freedom. They don't like to be told what to do or they belong here or to be possessed or anything like that. It's like, no, but then at the same time, it's like, okay, well, what you call liberation, what you call freedom as a woman, imagine if we told men those same things. Oh, you don't have to follow the rules of society. Don't worry about what people think about you. If you want to do it anyway. Like, once you say that to a man and a woman hears that, there's a different reaction that the woman will have from with an untamed man who was like, oh, snap, this man is going to just follow whatever he feels or do whatever he wants to do. And now I feel endangered because whatever that is might come at me. And you know what I mean? And it's different when you tell that to a feminine perspective versus a male perspective. So just when it comes to being a guide for children, you just have to really be aware of how these are going to affect one or the other growing up. Just yeah, you can't run from rage. Definitely can't run from rage. Sorry about that. But you can't run from your rage. Um, don't. Yeah, you just can't. And yeah, if you try to run away from your anger, you're just once again acknowledging its existence. A story comes to mind for me. It's not even a story; it's a situation where something bad happened to me, and sometimes I question something bad happened to me, but then I invested into trying to evolve it into something better. And yeah, that's what we do when we need to heal. But at the same time, there was a small part of me that's like, the fact that I went down this path because of what happened to me, did I actually just feed more into that situation, into that thing that broke me? Is that darkness, that black, that it's not even darkness, it's not even, it's not just that pain, is it just trying to give me more pain so it can be fed more? Is this pain just trying to be expressed so it puts me in situations or makes me feel like I need to put myself in situations that further makes it express itself through me? And am I just investing my life into this pain in such a way that the pain is living my life, is living through me, and is actually shaping my life. When really I think that I'm trying to heal, but really I'm just becoming that monster. You know what I mean? There are times when I do think about that. When I do think, with what happened with me in my life through this bad situation, and when I invested in trying to heal myself, did I invest, what actually did I, sometimes I think about that. So, yeah, so just don't try to run from your pain. So sometimes pain will happen, and you'll make a decision that was based on that pain happening, or the situation happening to you. If that situation would have never happened to you, you probably would have made the exact opposite choice. But because you went through this pain, that pain now has become the influence that has made you make the decision that you did, and therefore has shaped the direction of your future and how you evolve. That gets into a very, very deep philosophy that I don't have the energy to get into right now, nor is it proper. But keep that in mind. It's important to praise your kids, when they do something. Uh, sometimes they'll do something and it's good. Sometimes they'll do something and it may turn out bad. But just say, you know what, you did something and you tried it out, and I'm sorry it didn't work out. Versus, and also, oh, you did something and it worked out. That's good. Um, I rented out a vehicle, a van, and I'm not going to go down the whole story. It's a long story, but I got a new vehicle. Things fell apart. A lot of things fell apart. And now, a lot of people look at me like, oh, you got this expensive vehicle. You got no job to handle it. You can barely handle these payments. Your whole life's, you're struggling, you can't get a good job, you're not saving your money, you're not doing, it's like all this judgment. There's like, oh, because you were stupid for getting that vehicle in every single, way, shape, and form. But all the plans that I had were all investments for my future. There was like 10 things, 10, 12 things that I got this vehicle for as an investment. Something went wrong and all of those just fell through. And now everyone's looking at me as if I'm stupid, and I'm dumb, and what I did was wrong and I was stupid. But if I would have succeeded, then they would have been like, "Oh, you were smart. You made an investment for your future and you were smart and everything worked out in your life." Like the fact that you're looking at that, that's good. But the fact that I failed at doing it, I'm criticized. So it's important that when your child does something, you need to look at that root and say, I see where your mind is, and I see what your attempt was, and I appreciate where your mind is, whether it worked out or didn't work out. You made a decision based on this thing, and I'm proud of you for existing in that realm, for existing in that type of space. And I'm proud of you for doing that. Yeah. So yeah, praise your children for not just, succeeding, but also for some of the bad things. So now we have the last set of notes. Episode 6, 7, 8, and 9. Episode 10 actually doesn't have any notes. Episode 6. This episode was about honesty and trust. Now, if you guys want more analytical details, look at my reviews for episode 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Because I worked really hard on those reviews. It may not seem like it because of how much I drag on when I talk. But I work really hard on the details of those. So if you want more in depth, just maybe go into those. Those are pretty long reviews, also. Wow, 3 hours. Um, Dexter finds a paper in Harrison's bag. If you see something, let your kid feel comfortable enough to share it with you. If you do accidentally find it, just be like, just don't just let wait, just don't be nosy, just don't go down. If you're just let your child feel comfortable with opening up to you. When your child wants independence and they want a new job and they need your help with this thing, support them. Just be like, okay, you want some support, I got you. But if your child tries to be independent, don't hold them back and say no. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like what you're investing in, and therefore I won't support you in that. It's like, so when your child is trying to be independent, just respect the independence. Respect that they need to do things on their own, because if not, when you're not around, how are they going to handle it themselves? How are they going to grow up knowing how to handle life themselves? Um, so Dexter confesses to Angela about, why he faked his death and everything, why he changed his name. And she reacts the way she reacts simply because honesty is honesty. And sometimes there needs to be a reality check that if you don't have trust, then how are you going to build a healthy relationship? You need that trust. You need that trust as a good stable foundation. Um, Sometimes when you're honest about situations, you could lie in a situation. You may think, darn it, I really want this thing, but I could lie to them. But sometimes being open and honest helps them be open and honest with you, especially when it comes to an opportunity. You want honesty to be right straight out the gate. That first initial intro is the real you, the authentic real you. And so being honest, so it works out, especially when it comes to a big investment for your future. Just be honest about it. Sometimes things work out. You don't have to lie. Um, your children, they won't be honest with you if you weren't honest with them. So please be honest with them. Um, if you want them to open up and really tell you things that are deep, then be honest about something, a part of yourself. Harrison asks Dexter, he's like, did you even know that I was missing? That was gone all night. When Angela brings him to the house, and she tells Dexter, I just caught your son having a sexual relationship with my daughter. Dexter's like, what? Like, yeah, that when it comes to the whole sex talk, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, teach them about all that. That's a whole other gateway. But in this situation, Harrison was just wondering if Dexter even knew that he disappeared or was missing all night. Just let your kids be seen. Um, Sometimes when you're too honest about a part of yourself, or you're too honest to the point where a situation's not right, and you're just like, oh, I got to get to the bottom of this because something's not right. I need the truth, or I need full honesty. It's like, no, sometimes you don't. Sometimes trying to find truth only leads to more problems, or it leads to a dark situation or a dark truth that you are not ready to handle. Sometimes we want the truth because we feel unsecure about something. And once we have the truth, we feel like, okay, I can feel safe now because I have the truth. But sometimes that truth can hurt us, if we continue to pursue it and we end up finding out something that we wish we hadn't. I don't know. I know that advice can be misinterpreted in certain ways, but just be careful sometimes that you don't become so obsessive that you get yourself in a messed up situation. you know, sometimes you're happy, you stay happy. You don't have to go down a whole rabbit hole and be like, this doesn't make sense to me. Time to keep digging. This doesn't make sense to me either. Time to keep on digging, and you just dig and dig and dig until eventually you find something, or you find something in someone's past of and you're just like, why was I not told about any of this? It's like, because I wanted to let this go. I wasn't this person. I'm not this person anymore. It's like, but you did all this bad stuff in the past and you didn't tell me. It's like, yeah, but it's just you never know what you'll find. Um, Going to the next line. When you do seek honesty, you can discover why you were broken in the first place. So sometimes someone, you think you know someone, and that trust is broken, and you're like, oh man, that trust is broken, and you go down that rabbit hole. You're going to be reminded of why you have trust issues in the first place. You're going to meet that spirit. You're going to meet that shadow face to face. Again at some point. Um, there is such thing as a toxic supportive parent versus a loving supportive parent. You can have all the love in the world. You can still teach your child to be bad, teach your child destructive behaviors. Um, you know, I've seen that people raising their children and teaching their children how to hurt, how to just I've seen some bad things, and just know that there is a way to teach your kids how to be bad. There's such thing as toxic parenting. You know, versus being supportive or a loving parent. Discipline is a big one. Um, sometimes enabling bad behaviors in children isn't what's needed for them. Sometimes it hurts them more. Um, this, I believe, is episode 7. That's it for episode 6. Episode 7. Um, when your child says something angry, they're upset about something. When I say child, and I say child because there's no adult word for child, for kid. It's just, toddler, baby, adolescence, teen. And then what do you call a kid that's an adult? A child, you know what I mean? So it's hard to say, when I say child or kid, son or daughter, kid, pops up, but it's like, nah, these people can be adults too. And, I probably should have said that at the beginning of this, but yeah. But when your son or your daughter, whatever, when they are being difficult, sometimes the best thing to do is to not fight them back or argue, just to be cool about it. And then they'll eventually, probably within the next few seconds, they'll be like, okay, cool. I let my anger out, my bad, and just move on. It's like, cool, awesome. Let them work out their issue, then move forward. Um, Also, sometimes loose ends will, lead to the truth. So, sometimes just, what I mean is you can't always hide, your past from your children, nor should you, or from their own past. If they want to know about their adopted or birth family, don't be like, oh, I want to protect them from it. It's like you're sometimes protecting is not just about stopping bad things from coming from happening. It stops the good things from happening too. Shielding, guarding, protecting. that is blocking both good and bad. It's blocking a situation that is both evolutionary and beneficial, but also destructive, but beneficial, at the same time. So just be careful about that, trying to hide secrets and say I'm doing it for their own good, because you're doing it from their own good also when you do that. Episode 8. Um, Episode 8. Sometimes things just happen and we just don't have control over it. We don't know what's happening, and bad things happen behind the scenes. Um, Sometimes there are situations where we're attacked, where our weaknesses are attacked, and there's no way we can defend ourselves. We don't know how to, or we let our guard down because we trust this person, or we let their guard down because we've been broken in this area for so long, and some random person came up and they were like, "Oh, you're you have daddy issues. Oh, you have mommy issues." Well, I'm going to work in that area and trigger them and make you feel safe and comfortable, let your guard down with me. And once I get in there, I'm going to just sabotage you even more, take what I want from you, then just leave you. So that happens. Um, so sometimes having mommy and daddy issues leaves weaknesses, and there will be predators that will see that and will look at you as prey and say, "Oh, they got issues. They got mommy issues. They got daddy issues. I know the right formula to get them." So just mommy and daddy issues. They hurt. Oh, next line, next note. If you don't share your darkness with your children, then they might share it with their partner, or with the other person. Sorry, with an other person. I've already went through that. But yeah, just be careful, as you don't know how it's going to come out in what way. Next line. For children, don't turn your phone off, because real emergency might happen. Um, and you may need to get a hold of someone. Someone may be in the hospital. Someone may have died. You may have been in a car accident, and you're calling your child. You're calling your son or your daughter. You may be trying to call your parent or whatever. And you're just like, "Hey, I just got into a car accident and I'm bleeding out and I'm probably going to die. And these are the last words I have to tell you. So, I just want to say I love you. I want to stay in this moment with you forever, and then, you just never know. So, just keep just keep your phone on. So when sometimes you may disappear and not want to share your location with your parents because they're so overbearing, and then you may turn off your location, and then something bad happens to you, and you're like, "Oh man, I turned my phone off. I turned my location device and my locator off, so no one can find me. I'm in a bad situation now." you know but as parents, you have to understand that you have to respect your child. You have to respect that when you're trying to track, find my iPhone or whatever, or track where your uh, son or daughter is, things like that. You can't just be like, "Oh, I'm going to track you and find out where you are all the time." Like, let your children feel safe enough to be like, "Okay, this is where I'm going to be at. So if anything does happen, you know where I'm at, and you know where to call the cops, where they need to go." Let your child, your daughter or your son feel safe enough to say that to you. Don't just blame them for that. Let them feel safe enough just to share that with you. Because it might be a life threatening situation. The last note I wrote down is passing down family legacy. Just help explain why the family business is important. We we have traditions in life to keep us connected to our bloodline, to keep us connected to what makes us special as a family, to what helps keep us connected to our ancestors, our gifts, things like that of that nature. And so, just remind your children, just remind the descendants why traditions are important, why certain things are important, and sometimes we may have a faith or religion, and we may not understand it, or we may not agree with it, or we may just not know anything about it. It's just something we grew up with, and then our children are born, and it's like, okay, well, how do we handle passing down the tradition to them? It's like I was a part of this tradition, and it helped me in some ways, but in many other ways, it hurt me. So, do I really want to pass this down to them? It's like, well, maybe if you pass it down to them, you can explain to them the importance of why certain things are important, but also reserve the good things that you were denied because you didn't have full understanding of this belief system. And say it's okay to let goodness and love into your heart and happiness. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to feel joy. You don't have to feel guilty about it. Just teach your child that it's okay, while also teaching them why it's important to hold on to these belief systems, to these, not belief systems, these traditions. I'm sorry. The end of the show of Dexter New Blood ends with Harrison saying, "Open your eyes and look at what you did." The very first thing Dexter said to his first victim in episode 1 of season 1. And Dexter accepted. He said, "I never really felt love until now." But Dexter accepted the path of his light. Dexter accepted the path of his light at the very first episode of the season after the buck was killed, after the deer was shot, and Dexter actually killed Matt. And then Dexter accepted Harrison. Dexter, at that point, sealed his fate and chose to go down the path of his light. And by the end of this finale, the result of choosing the path of your light is to be reminded of why things are important traditionally, why we do things, why they're in place, how they affect us, why do they affect us the way that they do, what parts are important that need to be passed down when it comes to the legacy. And by the end of it, Dexter representing his own darkness and his son representing his light, his light killed his darkness through his understanding. And that is why the ending happened the way that it did. Um, so that's why it happened the way it did. So just know that our children can have a piece of light in them that we had or have in ourselves that got buried, or maybe we felt it was so disconnected. But when we have a kid, they have a fresh potency of light within them that we had. And we may be like, oh man, I remember when I was your age and I had this perspective on life and I had this spunk. And I was like, it's crazy that you have it. It's like sometimes a child is here to reflect our higher light and to remind us of who we are at the best version of ourselves. And instead of abiding by what instead of abiding by who the world has made us out to be, how the world's made us be, maybe we need to just look at the light that our children still have inside of them, and how that light can help us stay connected strongly to life, and smiling, enjoying our existence here. Sometimes, accepting that love, accepting that light, accepting that path, can really elevate a family, evolve a family in such a way. I know that my family is struggling right now. The thing about my family is we are financially divided. And if we were all closer, guarantee we could be very wealthy, very rich. My parents could retire, between our opportunities, our experiences, the money that we have, our motivations. If we were together as a family and we had a healthy relationship with each other, then that would evolve us as a family. There's always a center point in which a family revolves around. And it is your responsibility to say, okay, the family business, the family is going to revolve around this idea, this concept, this motivation, this thing. It's important to have many different values. It's important to have, a good, healthy understanding of love. But understand that if all you offer your children are lies, all that you offer your children are just negativity, abuse, a feeling of not feeling safe. If all you offer is just constant division instead of unity, then your family's not going to thrive. And if you say that your intentions should be all that matters is obedience and attention, then you're really going to hurt your family by relying on those two things. If you rely on obedience, then you'll say, I have all the answers. But if you had all the answers, why isn't it working out right now? You have the answers to maintaining your own pain. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. Thank you for listening to this. I really appreciate you. And I was hoping this was going to be a lot shorter, but it isn't. Thank you for listening to this. This is Dexter New Blood, and this is about parenting. You guys all have a good day. And yeah, thank you for joining me in this project. Thank you for listening, and you all have a great day. Movies with love.